Hello everyone, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. After a long, exhausting day, this is honestly my favorite part. Sitting down with my mic and sharing my paranormal experiences with you. Thank you so much for always supporting our team. And please don't hesitate to send in your own paranormal stories. I love reading them. I always check the comments, so feel free to drop yours down below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos. Thanks again. Now, let's jump into today's paranormal experiences. So, let me take you back to one of my earliest memories. I was about 4 years old, and my parents had just moved us into our very first real house. Like, our house. Everything still felt new and a little echoey, you know? To celebrate, my family decided to make a whole thing of it. A big sleepover in the living room. Cousins everywhere, my aunties and uncles laughing and talking late, blankets piled up like a fort. Somebody put on a movie, E.T., which, as a grown-up, I get is supposed to be sweet, but as a tiny kid, absolutely terrifying. I remember trying to act brave while secretly wishing it would just end already. Eventually, the lights went off and everyone settled down. And I swear, that night is still crystal clear in my head. At some point, I woke up because someone was standing near me. It was a girl, but not like a normal girl. She looked like she'd stepped right out of a cartoon. Bright blonde hair, this bubblegum pink dress, and the colors were so vivid that even now, years later, I can still see her like she's right in front of me. And she's holding this paint bucket and this ridiculous paintbrush, like comically huge, the kind you'd see in an old animated short. She leans in, like we're friends, and in this calm, casual way, she asks me to come outside with her because she wanted to paint some things. And for some reason, this is what gets me, I just went. Like it felt normal. I didn't wake my parents. I didn't wake any of my cousins. Nobody stirred. I just followed her right out the front door. The air outside was cool and quiet. We lived out in this semi-rural neighborhood, lots of open land, fields nearby, the kind of place where the nights feel extra dark because there aren't many streetlights. My dad was the type who didn't even bother locking his truck out there. He'd always say, "What's gonna happen? The cows are gonna steal it?" The girl leads me around the side of the house to my dad's pickup. Now, important detail. That truck was huge, lifted. The door handle was basically at my forehead. I was a tiny kid. I couldn't have climbed into it on my own if my life depended on it. And I barely ever rode in it, so it's not like I had some little kid routine for how to get in. But she walks right up to the driver's side like she belongs there. And she opens the door. Then she sets the paint bucket on the ground, like a step, and motions for me to climb up. I remember stepping onto the bucket, grabbing the seat, hauling myself in with this wobbly little kid effort. And then I'm inside the truck. And then, my stomach drops. Because I realize I'm alone. I don't even remember hearing the door shut, but suddenly I'm stuck in there, and I can see her outside, just walking away. Like she's finished with me. Like this was the whole plan. And the fear hits me all at once. Pure, full-body panic. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. And my brain immediately goes to the movie we watched, and I'm convinced that any second, something is going to come out of the dark. Not even just something. I'm imagining that creepy alien face from the screen, peeking around the corner of the house. I start screaming, crying, full meltdown. The kind where you don't even breathe right. You're just making sound because you have to. And here's the only reason I'm not telling this as a missing kid story. My dad was still awake. He'd gone out to the garage to tinker with something. He does that sometimes when everyone's asleep, just puttering around with tools. And somehow, through the walls and the quiet, he hears me. He runs inside and sees the front door standing wide open. So my dad bolts outside thinking the worst, like full adrenaline, heart in his stomach, because what kind of parent sees an open front door at midnight and hears their little kids screaming. He finds me in the truck. He yanks the door open, scoops me up, trying to calm me down, asking me what happened, how I got there, who brought me out. And I'm just sobbing and babbling about the girl and the paint bucket and how scared I was. The next day, he checked everything. Walked around the truck, looked for anything I could have climbed on. There was nothing. No stools, no crates, nothing that would make it make sense. And he kept asking me, over and over, how I opened the door. But I couldn't have. I know I couldn't have. And my family still brings it up sometimes, like this weird little mystery that never got solved. How did you get in there? They'll say, half laughing, half not. What really messes with me is that was just the beginning. After that, I started having these strange little experiences on and off, things I can't neatly explain. And it honestly feels like whatever was around that night kind of stayed interested, like it noticed me. But I'll admit something. As creepy as it is, it's also kind of a perfect story to tell when I want to freak someone out. Because I mean, come on. A cartoon girl with a paint bucket led me into a locked truck in the middle of the night. And nobody saw a thing. Okay, so I've been quietly reading people's stories for a while, and it hit me that I'm sitting on a few moments from my life that I've never really told all in one place. They're spaced out over years, and none of them feel like campfire spooky when I remember them. They feel personal, like the room got close around me. So, here we go. 3 experiences, and I'm genuinely curious what you make of them. The first one happened when I was a kid, maybe 13 or so. My aunt had this older place up in New England, creaky, drafty, the kind of house that always smells faintly like wood and old books. My cousin Mara and my cousin Jason and I were in the guest bedroom, sprawled across the bed like we owned the world, laughing at ghost stories and basically roasting the whole idea of anything paranormal. We were being obnoxious about it too, like, if something's here, do it right now. That kind of energy. And I swear, it was like the house took that personally. The ceiling fan light blinked, just once, then again, like someone was tapping a switch. And then the closet door. The closet door was one of those sliding ones, and it was fully shut. No gap, no wobble. It didn't slide open gently. It snapped open so hard it banged against the frame, like someone yanked it with both hands. All 3 of us froze for half a second, like our brains couldn't catch up. Then we lost it. We bolted out of that room screaming, tripping over each other, full panic. After that, I would go anywhere in that house except that bedroom, even in daylight, even with people around. That room never felt the same again, and honestly, thinking about it still makes my stomach tighten. The second one was a few years later, after my family moved to a quieter area, more spread out, lots of fields and long roads where everything feels a little too empty. I used to catch the bus early, like painfully early, around 7:10ish. It was October, still dark out, the kind of morning where the streetlights feel like they're doing all the work. We were riding through this newer neighborhood, fresh-looking houses, neat lawns, that just-built vibe. The bus stops, a couple kids climb on, and I'm half awake, staring out the window. And that's when I see her. A little girl, tiny, maybe 5 years old, standing near the sidewalk. She had this pale dress on, and she was holding a stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm like it was her favorite thing in the world. She wasn't crying, she wasn't waving, she was just standing there, still as a cutout. At first my brain goes, oh, she's someone's little sister. But then this cold logic hits me. Why would a kid that small be outside alone right now? It's dark, it's early. No adult anywhere. My heart did that weird drop, like when you miss a step on the stairs. I looked away for a second, just a second, because the bus started moving, and then I snapped my eyes back to the same spot. And she was gone. Not walking away, not running up a driveway, not behind a tree, just gone. Like someone erased her. I remember sitting there thinking, okay, that didn't happen. But I also remember exactly what she looked like, and how the whole moment felt too sharp to be a daydream. The third one happened when I was older, right after I started my first real job. I had to travel for work, this time to Philadelphia, not too far from downtown. The hotel was one of those older ones with fancy trim and dim lighting and carpets that swallow your footsteps. I tried to laugh it off at check-in. I made a stupid little joke like, "This place feels haunted." And the person at the desk, her name tag said Renee, didn't smile. She just said, very flat, "We don't talk about that here." Which, okay, weird. Then she tells me they upgraded me and hands me a key for room 1127. She explains it's a corner room, kind of tucked away. And she's not kidding. To get to it, you had to go down one hallway, step through a little side section like a mini corridor, and the room was there by itself, like it didn't belong to the rest of the floor. When I opened the door, the room was huge, like borderline suite, old furniture, lots of space, and it felt wrong. Not messy or gross, just wrong. Like the room had a mood. My phone was nearly dead, so the first thing I did was plug it in. And here's where it starts getting stupid. Every time it would begin charging, the battery would plummet instead. Like it was draining faster because it was plugged in. I tried different outlets, same thing. I remember actually staring at the battery percentage like, this is impossible. I tried calling my cousin Theo because I wanted to laugh about it and calm down. The call connected, but all I could hear was static, like an old radio between stations. My email worked fine, my internet was fine, just the call was a mess. Then Theo's voice cuts through and he goes, "Why are you whispering? And why do I hear other people?" And I swear to you, I wasn't whispering. I wasn't even talking. I was standing there with my phone in my hand, staring at the screen like an idiot. Then I hear a creak behind me. I turn around and the hotel room door is slightly open. Not wide open, just cracked. Like someone had gently pulled it an inch or two. I know I shut it when I came in. It was heavy, solid wood, and it took effort to close. I walk over, put my hand on it, and the second my fingers touch the edge, it slams. Not like a soft latch, like a full-body, shake-the-room slam. It was so loud my heart started hammering instantly, adrenaline straight to the throat. And the thing is, I didn't push it. I barely touched it. At that point, I'm doing that mental bargaining thing. You're tired. You're anxious. Stop being ridiculous. So I decide to shower and reset. The bathroom mirror was spotless, like weirdly perfect. No streaks, no smudges, nothing. I take this really hot shower, the kind that fogs everything. Steam rolls across the mirror, and I'm watching it cloud over. And then, right in front of me, letters start appearing through the fog like someone is tracing with a fingertip. Slowly, clearly. 11:27. Not backwards, not messy, like someone wrote it on purpose. I just stood there frozen, water still running, heart pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking my ribs. I remember whispering, "Nope," out loud without even thinking. I left for dinner with a coworker almost immediately, like I needed to be around another human being in a different building under bright lights. I tried to act normal through the meal, but I felt like I was buzzing inside. When I came back, I went straight to the front desk and told them I couldn't stay in that room. I didn't even try to sound cool about it. I told them the phone thing, the door, the mirror, everything. And the person at the desk didn't look surprised. They just said, "You're not the first," and moved me to another room. Only problem? I had to go back and get my stuff. Once the lights are on, I start shoving things into my bag as fast as I can. And then it happens. Every hair on the back of my neck rises at once. That unmistakable feeling of being watched. Not imagined, not maybe, like eyes on you. I stopped, took a breath, and I said, out loud, something like, "I'm leaving. I'm taking my things and I'm going. I understand you want me out." And I don't know why, but I tried to say it calmly, like you talk to a nervous animal. I packed the rest of my stuff without looking into any mirrors, without turning my back on corners, and I left. The new room was mostly fine. Mostly. I still heard running in the hallway at around 2 or 3 in the morning, like fast footsteps that didn't sound like a sleepy guest. And once, I woke up to a loud bang on my door. I didn't open it. I didn't even move. I just waited until I couldn't hear anything anymore. But the strangest part was what happened after the trip. For weeks, maybe a month or two, I felt like someone had scooped the energy out of me. I was tired, down, unmotivated. Not normal work stress tired, more like I couldn't find the brightness in anything. I didn't have a reason. Nothing in my life had changed. I just felt heavy. And then, slowly, it faded. It's been years now, and nothing like that has happened again. But those 3 moments, especially that hotel room, I carry them like little stones in my pocket. I can live my life, laugh, be normal. And then once in a while, I'll remember the closet door flying open, or the little girl with the stuffed rabbit, or that number forming on a fogged mirror like a message meant only for me. And I still don't know what any of it was, but I know what it felt like. Hey, so I should probably start by saying I've never been the kind of person who automatically believes in ghosts. I love horror movies. I love a good creepy story, and I've always had that curiosity that pulls you toward places you're not supposed to go, like abandoned buildings at night. I've wandered through empty hospitals and all those so-called haunted spots, and honestly, for years, nothing ever happened. Lots of eerie vibes, sure, but nothing that made me go, okay, that was real. Except, there are 2 moments I keep coming back to. One from when I was a kid, and one that happened not that long ago. And together, they've kind of messed with my confidence in my own skepticism. So, when I was little, my grandpa passed away. We were close, and his house had this really specific smell. Not like food or candles, more like aftershave mixed with that clean, powdery scent some lotions have. It was his smell. The kind of thing you don't notice until it's gone, and then it hits you like a memory you can't control. A few days after the funeral, I was home alone. Quiet house, middle of the afternoon, normal light through the windows, nothing spooky. I was just walking down the hallway, and suddenly I smelled it. That exact scent, strong enough that it stopped me in my tracks. And without thinking, I followed it, like it had a direction. It led me toward the living room, and I remember feeling weirdly calm, almost. Like my brain went, "Oh, there you are." But the second I stepped into the room, it just vanished. Not faded, vanished. Like someone flipped a switch and the air went blank. I stood there for a long time, kind of frozen, staring at nothing, trying to make sense of what I'd just felt. And for years I told myself, maybe that was him. Maybe he came by one last time to check on me. Then I got older, and the practical part of my brain kicked in. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I'd picked up the scent from something, clothes, a pillow, whatever. And I'm aware childhood memories can be slippery. But the thing is, I still remember it so clearly. That's what creeps me out. Not in a horror movie way, more like a soft, unsettling question that never fully leaves. Okay, so that was the first thing. The second one is the reason I can't just laugh this off anymore. This happened last summer. My friend Mara and I were out late, walking near this old psychiatric hospital on the edge of town. One of those places that looks wrong even in daylight. Broken windows, weeds up to your knees, that heavy silence like the building is holding its breath. It was a warm night, totally clear. No fog, no mist, nothing like that. We weren't even inside, just outside, looping around the grounds like idiots who think they're fearless. I had a flashlight, but I kept it on the low setting to save battery. We're walking, talking quietly, and I sweep the beam ahead of us, and suddenly there's this white shape in the light. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't like, oh, that's a plastic bag. It had presence. It was upright, moving, crossing the beam like something stepping right in front of us. I panicked so hard my stomach dropped. Instinctively, I clicked the flashlight to full brightness, like more light would make it make sense. Just gone. For that brief moment on low, it looked like a woman in an old-fashioned dress, like something from a different century. And this is the part that makes my skin prickle even now. I swear I saw the motion of legs underneath, like a walking stride. Not floating, not drifting, walking. Mara was looking the other way, and I remember babbling, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And she went really still and said something like, "I didn't see it straight on, but I saw something white out of the corner of my eye." We stood there arguing with reality for a minute. Then we tried to recreate it, pointing the flashlight at different angles, stepping around, trying to force it to be logical. Maybe a weird glare, maybe dust, maybe something on the lens. But there was nothing. No fog, no reflective sign, no fabric caught on a branch. Nothing that could have made a human-shaped white figure appear for 1 second and then vanish like it never existed. After that, we left. Not dramatically running, just walking faster than we meant to, both pretending we were fine. I ended up staying at Mara's cottage that night, and I'm not ashamed to admit I was jumpy. Even doing something as basic as stepping outside to use the bathroom felt like walking into a spotlight. I kept the flashlight on the whole time, scanning the yard, turning my head constantly like something might be waiting in the dark, just beyond where the beam could reach. And the weirdest part? It wasn't even that I thought something would attack me. It was more like I couldn't stand the idea of seeing something again. Something that didn't fit into the rules I rely on. So yeah, if you asked me now whether I believe in ghosts, I'd honestly say I'm split right down the middle. Half of me thinks there's probably a logical explanation for both things. Grief memory for the scent, some trick of light for the figure. And then the other half of me remembers that white dress stepping across my flashlight beam on a perfectly clear night, and I just don't know. I'm not even telling you this to convince you. I just want to talk it through with someone who'll take it seriously. So tell me, what would you think if you were there? So, my partner Eli and I have been through plenty of weird life stuff, right? Moving stress, sleepless nights, kid chaos, normal. But this felt different. A couple weeks ago, we moved our little girl Maya into her big kid bedroom. We were so excited. New bedding, her favorite stuffed bunny, the whole sweet little setup. And ever since that first night, It's like the room has been fighting her. She won't stay asleep in there. And when she wakes up, it's not the usual "I had a bad dream" whimper. It's full-on, panicked, can't catch her breath screaming. Sometimes she's shaking so hard her little teeth chatter. And then there are these random marks, like tiny bruises, little scratches. Not enough to rush to the ER, but enough to make your stomach drop because you're like, how? When? From what? Earlier today, during her nap, she popped awake crying and reached out her hand like she was offering me something. I thought it was her blanket at first. No. She's holding this straight pin, like a sewing pin, just sitting in her fist like it had been placed there. I took it from her so fast and I'm standing there thinking, we don't even keep these where she can reach them. Where would that come from? Then tonight, well, technically it was early morning, at 11:47 p.m., she starts screaming so loud it jolts me out of sleep like someone set off an alarm inside my chest. I nudged Eli and I'm like, go, check her. I think she got hurt. But the more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't a pain cry. It was fear. Pure fear. Eli goes into her room and I hear him pause, like he stopped moving. When he came back out, his face looked wrong. Tight, pale, serious in a way I'm not used to seeing on him. He said when he opened the door, Maya wasn't facing him. She had her back turned, pressed toward the corner. One foot was on the bed, one foot off, like she was halfway climbing and didn't know where to go. Her shoulders were hunched up, and her hands were beside her head, like she was trying to block something out, just screaming and screaming at the corner, like the corner had done something to her. And then I walked into that room and I don't know how to explain it without sounding dramatic. The air felt sharp, like a prickly, buzzing pressure on your skin. Not cold, not hot, just wrong. It made my chest tighten immediately, like the room was too small even though it's not. I felt claustrophobic the second I crossed the doorway. Instant anxiety, the kind that doesn't feel like your own. Eli told me something else too. He said standing with his back toward that corner made him feel like there was something right behind him. And even when he turned around and looked, nothing there, he still felt it. Like when you know someone is in the room with you, except you can't prove it. We didn't even debate it. We scooped her up and brought her into our bedroom. I sat on the bed with her wrapped against my chest, rocking her, trying to get her breathing to slow down. You know how toddlers are. You can't exactly interview them like little witnesses. So I just asked gentle stuff. Are you okay, baby? Did you bump yourself? Did something scare you? And she sniffled and nodded this tiny nod. So I asked, did you see something scary? And she looks at me with those wet little eyes and goes, very softly, yeah, scary. Now here's where it gets worse. Years ago, before this house, we lived in a cramped old place, and Eli had this one night where he swore he saw something. Not a person, not a shadow from headlights. Something. He hates talking about it because it genuinely messes him up in a way I can't even tease him about. It makes him emotional, like his eyes water on their own, which is so not him. After tonight, he quietly grabbed a piece of paper and drew what he'd seen back then, just from memory. And he didn't show me first. He showed Maya. She was still snuggled against me, calmer now. He held up the drawing and she stared at it for 1 second. One. And then she pointed and gasped like she recognized it, like it matched something she'd already seen. The drawing was simple, but horrifying. A tall, dark shape. Big, round eyes, too bright, too wide, and this stretched smile full of teeth, like the kind of grin that doesn't belong on anything living. Around it, he scribbled these dark swirls, like movement or static. Maya pointed right at it. and I felt my stomach drop so hard it was like missing a step on the stairs. Because what are the odds? A 2-year-old doesn't fake that kind of reaction. She doesn't know how to. And then, as if we needed more, we've had other things in this house. Little glimpses at the edge of your vision, tiny shapes darting down the hallway or slipping past a doorway. At first, earlier on, it felt bigger, like adult-sized movement. But lately it's been smaller, quick, almost like skittering. And sometimes, late at night, we hear what sounds like a child's voice. Not screaming, not crying, just talking. Even laughing, like it's playing somewhere it shouldn't be. So sitting there with Maya in my arms, staring at Eli's drawing, I couldn't help it. The question just pushed its way out of me. Is something focused on her? Because she's little. Because she's new to that room. Because she's the most vulnerable one in this house. And I know how that sounds. I do. But when your child wakes up shaking and your home suddenly doesn't feel like your home, you start thinking less about how you sound and more about what you're willing to do to make it stop. That's where we are. Right now, she's asleep in our room, and I'm watching her chest rise and fall like it's the only thing keeping me tethered. And I keep thinking about that corner, about that pin in her hand, about the way she pointed at that drawing like she knew it. And I can't shake this feeling that whatever it is, it's not just passing through. It's been here, and it noticed her. So, I'm not saying I know what this is, but if I had to put a label on it, the closest thing I can think of is a mimic. And yeah, maybe that sounds dramatic, but it's been happening for so long and in so many different places that I can't really shrug it off as a one-time weird moment. I've lived in the same house for most of my life, an old, familiar place where everything has its spot and every creak has a meaning. And for years, like years, I've heard voices call my name. Not just random sounds, clear voices. Sometimes it's my mom, sometimes my brother Jame. Once in a while it even sounds like me. And the weird part is, it'll happen when no one's home. At this point, I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but I've gotten used to it. It's like living next to a train track. You stop noticing the rumble unless you really focus on it. Most of the time, I ignore it. But every now and then, it catches me off guard, and I respond without thinking. Like, yeah? Or, what? And of course, nothing. No answer. No footsteps. Just empty air and that strange little pause afterward, where you feel like your body is waiting for reality to make sense again. It doesn't even stay confined to my house either. That's what gets me. I'll hear it at work too. Especially there, actually. I've heard coworkers call my name, like right behind me. And when I turn around, they're just staring at a shelf or stalking something, totally in their own world. I'll ask, "Hey, did you need me?" And they'll blink and go, "No, I didn't say anything." Like I'm the one being weird, which, fair. But the scariest moment? The one that still makes my skin prickle when I think about it. I was at work late one evening, cleaning up with a coworker named Tessa. We were side by side, wiping down a counter. Totally normal, mindless, end-of-shift stuff. And then this voice, this woman's voice I didn't recognize, leans in so close it felt physical and whispers my name right into my ear. Not shouted, not from across the room, not muffled like it came from a hallway. Right there, like lips almost touching my skin. And I swear to you, I felt it. The tiniest warmth at the side of my neck, like breath. I froze so hard my whole body went tight. My skin got that buzzing, tingling feeling, like every hair had decided to stand up at once. I didn't even want to turn around, because my brain was already filling in the shape of what might be standing behind me. Tessa didn't react at all, not even a flinch, which somehow made it worse. Then there was another moment, older, but it stuck with me because of how convincing it was. I've always been a restless sleeper, not the kind of person who falls asleep in 5 minutes and stays that way. More like, I'm always half floating. Eventually, it turned into full-on insomnia for a while. One night, years ago, I was in that thin, miserable state between sleep and wakefulness, when you don't know how long you've been staring at the dark. And suddenly I hear my dad's voice, Ed, shouting my name the way he does when he's furious. Not casual, not playful, that sharp, get down here right now kind of voice. I reacted automatically. I stumbled out of bed, heart pounding, and started heading downstairs without even thinking. And it wasn't until I reached the bottom step that I realized the house was pitch black. All the lights were off. No TV noise, no kitchen sounds, nothing. Still, I went looking. Kitchen first. Living room. Empty. Then I cracked open the basement door where his room was, and I called out, "Dad? Did you call me?" And he answers, groggy and confused, like I'd just woken him from a dead sleep. "No. What are you talking about?" What makes it even stranger is how it comes and goes. Sometimes it'll stop for a month or two, and I'll almost convince myself I imagined the whole thing. And then, one random day, bam, my name again. Like it's checking in, like it's reminding me it's still around. And the thing is, it doesn't feel malicious. Not usually. That's why when I say scary, I almost feel like I have to put it in quotes. It's more persistent, odd, personal. Like something has learned the quickest way to get my attention, and it keeps using it, but never follows through. I've had other weird experiences too, not just the voices. Things moving when they shouldn't. Once, a decorative ceramic dish that had been sitting on a high shelf forever, seriously, like close to 2 decades, just tipped and slid off like something nudged it. It shattered on the floor and barely missed my grandpa's head. That one shook me up because it felt less like spooky and more like someone could have gotten hurt. And then there's something else I almost hesitate to even bring up because it sounds so out there. A few years ago, maybe 5, I was being reckless and curious and had this stupid idea. Before going to sleep, I spoke out loud into the room, basically inviting something, anything, to come close and interact with me. And that night, I slept better than I had in a long time. Not in a drugged way, in a calm way, like the air in the room had settled. I woke up a few times, but each time it felt like gentle comfort, like soft fingertips brushing my cheek, like someone carefully smoothing my hair back, tucking it behind my ear. I didn't open my eyes. I'd promised I wouldn't. But I remember feeling safe, taken care of. Months later, I tried again, because of course I did. And again, it felt gentle, but this time there was something else in it, like a warning. Not threatening, more like urgent, like whatever it was wanted me to understand. Don't do this again. Not because it would hurt me, but because something else might notice. So I stopped. I haven't tried since. But here's the part that really messes with my head. The voices were happening long before that. The name calling, the mimicry, whatever you want to call it, was already part of my life. It didn't start because I invited something in. It was already there, or already with me. So I keep turning it over in my mind. Do mimics stick around permanently? Can something like that follow a person for years, across different places, and still never escalate? Why would it keep calling my name like it wants me to answer, and then do nothing when I do? I'm honestly open to other explanations. I'm not married to the idea that it's a mimic. I just don't understand the pattern, how personal it is, how long it's lasted, and how it somehow manages to feel both familiar and wrong at the exact same time. And I guess, if I'm being really honest, I'm not just asking what it is. I'm asking why it's been saying my name for most of my life, like it's trying to remind me I'm not alone, even when I am. Okay, so I've always been the kind of person who can feel when something's off. Not like hearing voices or seeing full-on ghosts in the hallway. More like the atmosphere changes, and your body notices before your brain can talk you out of it. The first time I really, truly knew something wasn't right, I was about 16. My family moved into this run-down old place. Creaky, dusty, the kind of house that always felt a little colder than it should have. And from the second I stepped into one particular section, 2 bedrooms and this narrow hallway, I just hated it. Like my skin didn't want to be there. Of course, guess which room became mine? I can't even explain it properly without sounding dramatic, but it felt like there was a presence in that house that was heavy and loud and only not loud like a noise, loud like pressure, like something taking up space in the air. It wasn't a shadow in the corner. It was more like a thing that moved around, and I always knew exactly where it was, like I could sense it the way you sense someone staring at you. At night, it was the worst. I'd lie there trying to sleep, and I could feel it coming closer and deliberate, until it was like it settled right on top of me. Crushing, dense. My body would freeze. Night after night, I'd get sleep paralysis, and I'd just be stuck there, panicking, trying to move a finger, trying to breathe like a normal person. Even during the day, I'd be in the living room, just sitting there, and suddenly, I'd feel it approach. That creeping dread, like being hunted. I started sleeping over at my grandparents' place any chance I got, and the weird part was, it only happened in that house, nowhere else. A few years later, different house, also kind of shabby, also old. And this time, it wasn't me. It was my twins. They were about 3, still little enough that they said things bluntly without any sense of how terrifying they sounded. They started talking about the man, just casually, like, "Oh yeah, the man sits in the sunroom," or "the man lives in the wall." And they'd point to this exact spot along the hallway, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. They said he was nice, and that he protected them from the girl. And the girl freaked them out. They'd be halfway down the hall and then suddenly sprint back into the lounge like their shoes were on fire, yelling that they couldn't go that way because the girl was there. They described her the same way every time. About 5 years old, pale white skin, black hair, black eyes, little cuts on her, barely dressed, and she'd hiss at them if they looked at her, like an angry animal. They insisted she lived in my sister Jade's cupboard. And the creepy detail, the back of that cupboard lined up with the same wall the kids swore the man lived in. They didn't understand the layout, obviously, but they kept saying very matter-of-factly, "Lots of people live in there." We tried to look up the house history. Nothing useful. No stories, no records that made it make sense. Just that. Then fast forward again. Another house. Older, but honestly, we'd been fine there for a while. No weird vibes. No drama. And then one day, it's like a switch flipped. One of the twins, Mia, suddenly refused to go to bed. Not the normal kid stuff. Not, "I want water," or "I had a bad dream." She was terrified in a way I can still picture in my head. She also started hating this specific toy in her room, an old doll pram we'd been given secondhand. She told me there was a black man with a tall hat who pushed the pram back and forth at night. Back and forth. And the wheels squeaked so loudly she had to cover her ears, She said he wanted her to look, like he was trying to make her watch him, but she'd hide under her blanket and refuse. But around the same time, I started having these awful, vivid nightmares, always about trying to protect my kids from being taken. Like, we'd be in crowded places, and I'd be grabbing them and pulling them back, and I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, already stressed before the day even started. I started dreading sleep. And then, one night, this is the moment I can't rationalize away. I woke up from one of those nightmares and went to the bathroom. On the way back, I looked down the hallway and I swear there was something at the end of it. Not a person exactly, more like a shape where a person shouldn't be. So, half asleep and annoyed and scared, I whispered, "If there's something there, leave us alone." And the hallway light snapped on. I just stood there, frozen, because it wasn't like a faulty switch. It was instant, clean, like a response. Still, somehow, I didn't fully connect it until the other twin, Lila, brought it up. I asked her to brush her teeth one evening, and she walked into the bathroom, then bolted back and jumped onto my bed like she'd been chased. She looked at me and goes, "Mom, I know you're not going to believe me because it's not real, but it is." And she described the exact same tall hat man. Said he'd been around the house for weeks, following her, watching her when she was in her room or when she was in the bathroom. I asked if she'd told her sister. She said no. So I called Mia in. And listening to them talk to each other, honestly, it was horrifying. They kept finishing each other's sentences, agreeing on little details, reacting like, "Yes, that." It was like they'd been carrying it separately and finally realized they weren't alone in it. That night, we dragged that doll pram out and basically threw it out the front door like we were in a movie. And yeah, we did the whole cleanse the house thing. Salt, incense, windows open, the whole crunchy ritual. And after that, nothing. It stopped. Completely. After that, we moved again, because apparently my life is just a tour of haunted real estate, and this next place had two totally different vibes. I kept seeing this soft, pale presence. Not a face, not a figure, more like a white mist at the edge of my vision, drifting past a doorway. It didn't feel threatening, so I'd just keep washing dishes or folding laundry like, okay, weird, anyway. But in that same house, Mia refused to sleep in the bedroom she was meant to have, because of what she called the big lady. The first couple nights, she came charging out of that room screaming, saying the big lady stuck her head out of the wall above her and screamed right in her face. After the first week or two, she stopped talking about it, but she never went back into that room willingly. Like her body just made the decision. Nope. Then, later, right before I had my fourth baby, something changed again, but this time it was good. Like this bright, gentle energy in the house, light and airy, almost like you could see it in the way the air felt. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to sound nuts. I just kind of quietly noticed it, like, okay, someone's here. One day, Lila came into my room to chat. While we were talking, I could feel that presence hovering in the hallway near the doorway. She finished talking and started to walk out, then paused in the doorway like she was about to say something. And I don't know why, but I stopped her. I told her, "Wait, don't say it yet." I grabbed a pen and quickly wrote down what I'd been sensing. White, shadowy, light feeling, right at the door. Then I said, "Okay, go." And she goes, "Mom, have you noticed the white shadowy thing that's been hanging around?" That one actually felt comforting, and for whatever reason, I always believed it was my partner's grandmother, someone I'd never met. It just felt like family, you know? Like someone checking in. And now, this last one is the reason I've been digging all these memories back up. My granddad, Ron, passed away in April this year. A few days after the funeral, my son's toys started turning on by themselves when I walked past his room. Just little sounds, music, lights, random beeps. I tried to brush it off, but it happened enough that I messaged my sister about it like, okay, this is weird, just so someone else knew I wasn't imagining it. And ever since then, my son, he's 5, has been talking about something he calls the magic in his room. He'll come out and tell me, totally casual, that the magic moved my toys, or the magic took my book out, or the magic wants to push my cars. And I'll say, maybe one of us bumped it, and he'll shake his head like I'm missing the obvious. He keeps trying to explain it in kid logic, like, it's like a person, but it's not because that's not real. And then he'll add, it's like fairies and stuff. The strangest part is, he doesn't seem scared. He thinks it's weird but not dangerous, like it's just something sharing space with him. And honestly, after everything I've lived through, the dark heaviness, the hissing girl, the tall hat man, the light in the hallway, this is the first time it feels like whatever it is might not be trying to hurt anyone. It might just be here. So, I don't talk about this a lot, because it still makes my skin prickle if I sit with it too long. But back in the mid-2000s, my family, there were 6 of us then, lived in what used to be military housing up in Northern California. It had that weird, leftover feeling some places get, like the walls remember things you don't. Most of what happened there involved these figures. That's the only word that fits. They were shaped like people, but they weren't people. Imagine a human outline filled in with dull gray or oily black, like a smear that learned how to stand up. No real features, just lighter patches where a mouth and eyes should be. That's it. Flat and blank and somehow still watching. And they didn't rush at me or do anything dramatic. That almost made it worse. I'd catch them leaning halfway out from behind a doorway or peeking around a corner, like they were testing whether I'd notice. Just hovering there, head tilted, eyes locked on me. The second I'd fully look, they'd slide back out of sight. Quiet, patient, like they had all the time in the world. A couple times it wasn't even a full figure. I remember seeing one that was just a torso, low to the ground like it had been cut off or sunk into the floor. No legs, no arms, just that same gray mass with the pale, unfinished face. My brain kept trying to label it as a trick of light, but my stomach didn't buy it for a second. There was only one that looked different, and I can still picture it more clearly than I want to. This tall man, and I'm using that word loosely, had something like a deep red stole or scarf draped over his shoulders, hanging down the front of his chest. He reminded me of a priest or someone ceremonial, but still smooth and featureless like the others. The red was the only real color any of them ever had, and it made him stand out in a way that felt intentional, like he wanted to be remembered. Then there were the things that didn't involve seeing anything at all. My sister, Marisol, told us she woke up one morning and felt this warm dip on her mattress, like someone had sat down right next to her. Not just an impression, like a body's weight pressing the bed. And the spot was warm too, like a person had been there long enough to heat the sheets. She froze, of course. Then she ran to get our brother Eli, because she didn't want to be alone with it. And he came in, all brave for about 3 seconds, until he saw it too. The mattress was pressed down, like someone invisible was perched there, and when he touched the spot, he jerked his hand back and went pale because it was warm. Warm like skin. Another thing everyone in the house heard, multiple times, was the swords. My dad had these decorative blades stored upright in the living room, kind of fanned out in a stand. Nothing fancy, just something he liked, something he'd collected, And late at night, when all of us were in our rooms and the house had gone still, we'd hear this sharp, metallic ting, then another, like someone flicking the blades with a fingernail. Not a crash, not like they fell, more like a deliberate little tap, one after another, as if whoever was doing it wanted us to know they were in there with them. And we didn't have pets then. No cat, no dog, nothing that could bump a stand or wander around at night. Just us, in our rooms, listening to metal sing out in the dark. We'd been in that place for years, and the tension had kind of become normal, which is a scary thing to admit. Like you can get used to being on edge. When the lease ended, we were so relieved we didn't even move far. We just relocated to the house next door in the same row, like we were sidestepping away from something we didn't want to name. On moving day, my stepdad Ronan and I carried boxes of pantry stuff, canned food, jars, all that heavy, clunky kitchen weight, from the old place to the new one. Before we left the old house that last time, we were careful. We shut every drawer, closed every cabinet. We double-checked the windows, locked the doors. I even remember the click of the deadbolt because it felt like finally putting a lid on something. We walked next door, unloaded, chatted with the rest of the family for a few minutes, and then realized we'd left behind a couple things. Small stuff, nothing important. So Ronan and I went back, and when we opened the door, every cabinet in the kitchen was standing wide open. Drawers pulled out like someone had yanked them all at once. It looked like the whole room had thrown up its hands. I remember just standing there with my mouth open, trying to come up with a normal explanation. But nothing fit. The windows were still locked. The doors were still locked. We'd been gone such a short time, and we'd been right next door. No sign anyone had been inside, except the kitchen itself, sitting there like it was showing off. Like, see? You can leave, but you don't get to pretend you're in control. The family that moved in after us apparently had strange experiences too. We heard that through neighbors. But whenever we tried to ask, they got tight-lipped and changed the subject, like they didn't want to invite the conversation to follow them home. And the creepiest part is how divided my parents were about what it all meant. Ronan thought it might have been his dad. His father had died years earlier, back on the other side of the country. He'd say it like a comfort, like maybe it was someone familiar trying to get attention in the only way he could. But my mom? She didn't buy that for a second. She said it didn't feel like family. It didn't feel protective. It felt like something that enjoyed being noticed, something that liked pushing just far enough to keep us uneasy. All I know is this: every one of us remembers the same kinds of things. We can disagree about what it was, but we don't disagree that it happened. And once we left that house, really left it, everything stopped. No shadow figures, no warm dents in beds, no swords singing in the living room at night. Just quiet. And sometimes that's what scares me most. How quickly it all went silent. Like whatever was there simply watched us go and decided it didn't need to follow. Hey, so I'm kind of nervous even saying this out loud, but I really could use some outside perspective. I live in Brooklyn with my partner Eli, and he's originally from upstate New York. Whenever we get a little stretch of time off, we drive up to see his parents. They still live in the house where he grew up. Quiet road, lots of trees, the whole vibe. Here's the thing. For the first few years I was going up there, I felt totally fine in that house. Like, normal. Cozy even. Nothing weird, nothing unsettling. But earlier this year we went up for a long weekend while his parents were out of town, and the first night we got there, something happened. We pulled in after dark, and we both saw something outside. Hard to explain, just this movement near the edge of the yard where there shouldn't have been anyone. We kind of laughed it off at first, like, okay, deer? A neighbor? But then later, when we were in bed, lights off, the room totally dark, I heard a voice, clear as day, right near the doorway, like someone was standing just inside the room. It said, "Hi." Not shouting, not a whisper either, just a calm, casual, "Hi," like it was normal for a stranger to greet me in the dark. I froze. My whole body went tight. I remember staring into the blackness, trying to convince myself it was Eli messing with me. Except he was right next to me, and I could tell by his breathing he hadn't moved. I didn't want to feed it by reacting, so I just laid there pretending I didn't hear it, even though my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking the bed. Since that night, the house feels different to me, but not everywhere. It's specific. The basement, and the driveway area right outside the basement door. And what's strange is, there's no obvious reason for the basement to feel bad. Eli used it for years as his little workshop, creative zone. He painted down there, recorded music, built stuff, stayed up late having these big, personal growth moments, you know? He loves it. To him, it's like his comfort cave. His parents built the place, and as far as I know, they're the only people who've ever lived there. No tragic backstory, no creepy history anyone's mentioned. It should feel neutral. But now? If I'm down there with him while he's working, I start to feel awful, and it comes on fast. At first it was subtle, like I just get quiet and tired. Then it got stronger. I'll be sitting there, trying to scroll on my phone or watch him mess with something, and suddenly I'm zoning out in this really intense way, like my brain is slipping sideways. And with it comes this heavy, sick feeling, like grief mixed with panic, hopelessness, anguish, like the emotional version of walking into a room where someone's been sobbing. And the weirdest part is, it doesn't feel like it's mine. I know how my own sadness feels. I know what anxiety feels like in my body. This feels like I've walked into somebody else's mood and it's crawling into me. It's intrusive and mean. And it took me a while to notice the pattern, but once I did, I couldn't unsee it. It happens in the basement, and it happens in the driveway right outside that basement door. Almost like there's a line, and if I cross it, I get hit with the same wave. Eli doesn't really feel anything like that. He'll admit the house can feel spooky at night sometimes, but it's a big, creaky place, and it's dark and rural. So honestly, that part feels normal. He has noticed I get weird down there, though. Like he'll ask, "Are you okay?" Because I get distant and flat and kind of not myself. That's the part that really freaks me out. The second I leave the basement area, it's like the feeling drops off a cliff. I'll walk upstairs and suddenly I can breathe again. My thoughts clear. My face feels like it belongs to me. I should probably add, years ago, like closer to 8 or 9 years back, I went through a short stretch where I had some really intense, creepy experiences. Enough that it changed how I think about this stuff. I don't even know what I believe, honestly. I'm not someone who's like, oh yeah, definitely spirits. I'm also not someone who can completely laugh it off anymore. I haven't had anything like that happen in a long time, and I genuinely thought that chapter of my life was closed. This isn't as extreme as back then, but it still messes me up, because I don't like feeling hijacked in my own mind. So, I guess I'm asking, what do you think could be going on? If you've ever felt something like this in a specific place, like a certain room carries a feeling that doesn't belong to you, what did you do? Is there anything I can do that's practical, or grounding, or even just symbolic, so I feel more protected when we're down there? Because right now, it's like I can handle the house, except for that one spot. And I hate how quickly it can turn me into someone I don't recognize. So, I'm not even sure how to package this in a neat little box for you, but I'm going to try. because I've been carrying it around for a long time. Back in 2013, I was living in a coastal pocket of the Mid-Atlantic, working for a state environmental office. Nothing glamorous, mostly compliance work. My job was basically, here's a permit, here's a blueprint, go to the property and make sure what they built matches what they promised. Docks, bulkheads, little piers that cut through marshland into the bay. A lot of measuring. A lot of awkward, "Hi, I swear I'm not trespassing," conversations. One afternoon, I had a short list of site visits, and one of them was a dock allegedly built behind a house that backed up to a salt marsh. The neighborhood was the kind of place where every driveway looked like it cost more than my entire yearly salary. Big homes, manicured hedges, boat lifts, the whole quiet wealth thing. And then I pulled up to this address. Right away, it looked wrong. Not just needs repairs, but like it had been dropped there from a totally different reality. On the corner were two gorgeous, modern homes, fresh siding, perfect landscaping, bright windows. But the house I was supposed to inspect looked like it was halfway to collapse. Warped, rotting wood, shingles curling off the roof, weeds swallowing the yard. It had that defeated, abandoned look, like it had been losing a slow fight with the sea for decades. Except for one detail. The white picket fence. That fence was immaculate. Bright, clean, straight as a ruler, like someone had painted it that morning and stood back proudly to admire their work. It didn't match anything else about the place. I remember sitting in my car with the paperwork in my lap, checking the address again and again. The blueprint didn't even seem to match the shape of the house I was looking at. But the neighboring houses lined up perfectly with their addresses, so I knew I wasn't on the wrong street. So I did what I always do. I walked up and tried the front door first. The storm door was hanging open. The inner screen door was shut, but it was torn in a couple places like an animal had clawed through it. I knocked, rang the bell, knocked again, louder. Nothing. And that was weird because who leaves their front door open in a neighborhood like this? I waited, listening. No footsteps, no TV, no voices. Just that coastal quiet, distant gulls, faint wind. My next thought was, okay, they're probably in the backyard. That happens all the time. So I went to head around the side of the house and realized I couldn't. The fence ran seamlessly along the property line and connected into the neighbors' fences like one continuous wall. And there was no gate, not on either side. No latch, no break in the line. Just a clean, tall, pristine barrier. That's when I started feeling, not scared exactly, but unsettled. Like my brain was trying to fit puzzle pieces together and they refused to connect. Still, I figured I could at least peek into the backyard, see if the dock existed, take a couple notes, and call it a day. I tried to look through the fence slats, but the angle was all wrong. So I grabbed the top rail and pulled myself up enough to look over. And what I saw made my stomach drop in the strangest way, because it was so blank. A perfectly square yard, completely level. Grass trimmed so close and evenly it looked like turf on a putting green. Not a toy, not a chair, not a tree. No flower beds, no shed, no little path worn into the lawn. Nothing. Just this unnaturally flawless green rectangle, like somebody had drawn backyard from memory without ever actually standing in one. And I remember thinking, how? How is this grass so perfect if there's no way to get equipment back here? Which made absolutely no sense, because the whole point of this permit was a dock. Why build a dock you can't reach? Why buy waterfront property and then wall yourself off from the view? I stood there, staring, trying to make it make sense. And at that point I decided, all right, this is a wash. I'll report I couldn't access the backyard. Annoying, but not unheard of. As I walked back toward my car, I glanced at the front door again, still open, and that little voice in my head went, "Someone has to be inside. This can't be nothing." So instead of leaving, I drifted toward the front windows. The glass was grimy, and the curtains were this faded, dusty lavender. I found a small gap in the fabric and leaned in just enough to see inside. And it was worse. The interior looked like the house had been drowned and then forgotten. The walls were blotched and peeling. The carpet was shredded and bunched up in heaps, like someone had ripped it apart and left it there. There was no furniture, no lamps, no photos. Nothing that said, "A person lives here." Just emptiness and decay. Then the smell hit me. At first it was faint, just a whiff when I leaned close. But the more I stood there, the more it crawled into my lungs. Sour, salty, rotten. Like stagnant seawater trapped in a basement. Like low tide baking in the sun, but sealed inside a house. I backed up, heart thumping, and told myself, "Okay, one more try at the door, then I'm leaving." I stepped onto the porch, called out, "Hello? Anyone home?" No answer. I tried again, louder, and introduced myself. Name, office, why I was there, the whole professional script. Still nothing. And I don't know why. Honestly, I still don't. But my mind went to the worst-case scenario. What if someone is hurt? What if this place was broken into? What if the open door isn't carelessness, but something else? So I opened the torn screen door and stepped inside. Just one step. Then life got busy. A big coastal storm hit that fall, and suddenly we were drowning in repair permits and inspections. The weird corner house got pushed to the back of my mind. Until the next year, when that old permit resurfaced in my stack. I stared at it for a long time before I finally drove back out there. Camera in my bag this time, determined to at least document whatever I could. I turned onto the street, slowed as I approached the corner, and the house was gone. And I don't mean demolished. I don't mean replaced. I mean, it was like it had never existed. The two expensive neighboring houses were still there, looking perfectly normal. But now they seemed closer together, each occupying one side of the corner like they had always been arranged that way. Where that derelict house had sat, there was just space. A clean, empty corner. Nothing to suggest a foundation, no construction debris, no fresh soil, no sign that anything had been removed. I checked the addresses again. Both neighbors matched. I checked my permit paperwork. Same as before. But the house I had stepped into, smelled, heard, felt, was simply not there. I took photos anyway. I went back to my supervisor, handed them over, and all I could really do was shrug like, I don't know what to tell you. The permit eventually got marked as unresolved and dropped. I moved on to other assignments, other sites, other normal corners of the world. But every so often, for no obvious reason, I'll think of that perfect fence and that empty green square of lawn, and that smell like trapped low tide. And I still get that same cold little twist in my stomach. Because I know what I saw. And I know what I felt. And I don't know where that house went, or if it was ever there at all. So, let me tell you what's been going on, because it's honestly been a lot, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how weirdly all of this lined up. A little while ago, I reconnected with an old friend. His name's Darius, and I started hanging around him and his son's mom, Kiara. At first, I was happy about it, like, okay, cool, we're all grown now. But the thing is, they argue constantly. Like, it's not just little bickering. Every hangout somehow turns into drama, tension, raised voices, the whole thing. And I didn't really realize how much that energy was getting into my space until stuff started happening around me too. The first thing was small, but it still bothered me. I was on my way to Darius's place, and he's texting me like I'm late to something important, rushing me, pressuring me, and I ended up getting into this little fender bender. Nothing crazy, just a stupid bump at a light. But still, it felt like, why am I even in this situation? That wouldn't have happened if I wasn't being pushed and stressed out. Then a few nights later, I go out with one of Darius's friends, Malik. And Malik is one of those people who can't just chill. He has to go out. He's like, "Come on, let's hit a spot." And I'm tired. I don't even feel like going anywhere. But I didn't want to seem boring or antisocial, so I went along with it. Next thing I know, we're in this club, way out in a part of town I don't even hang out in. It's not my scene, not my area, not my comfort zone, but I'm trying to just ride it out and get through the night. And then, it happens. I get jumped. Like fully jumped, out of nowhere. I'm trying to protect myself. Everything's chaotic, and by the time it's over, I've lost basically all my stuff. Phone, wallet, gone. And I'm standing there after, thinking, how did I even end up here? But here's where it gets even crazier. Right before that night, my mom tells me something my grandma said. My grandma is completely blind, has been for years, and she told my mom she had a dream about me getting beat up badly. And when my mom told me, I remember laughing it off like, that's wild. But I didn't take it seriously. And then it literally happened. Like, what are the odds? And even before all of that, I had already been feeling off. There were nights I'd be in my room and I'd see weird shapes, like figures in the dark. Not like a clear person, but enough to make my stomach drop. Enough to make me sit up and stare, trying to convince myself my eyes were playing tricks on me. After I got jumped, I was like, okay, I'm not brushing this off anymore. I reached out to 2 pastors. I started going to church. It's a Spanish church, and I don't understand everything. So they give me this little earpiece that translates to English. But honestly, even not understanding every word, I still feel something there. Like peace, or at least the chance of peace. So last night, this is the part that really got me. I had sleep paralysis. And when it's happening, it feels like you're trapped in your own body. Like you can think, you can feel fear, but you can't move. It's terrifying. It felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me. And when I finally could move again, I sat up and I said out loud, like from my chest, something like, I'm good. Nothing negative has authority over me. In the name of Jesus Christ. I tried to calm down, tried to go back to sleep, and I swear I hear a voice in my room say, clear as day, Hola. Just that. Hola. Like somebody leaned in and said it. And the fact that the church I've been going to is Spanish speaking, that made it hit even harder. My whole body went cold, and I remember checking the time when I left my room. It was 3:13 a.m. So I walk into my mom's room, and she has talk radio on. She always does. And the second I step in, I hear these experts talking. And I'm not exaggerating. They were literally saying stuff like, don't let negativity get to you. There will always be dark things around, but don't be afraid. Fear feeds it. Fear isn't real. And I'm standing there in the doorway thinking, are you serious right now? Out of every moment in the night, I walk in exactly when they're saying that? It felt like a message. Like something was trying to get through to me. Or like God was reminding me, you're not alone, but you also don't have to live scared. Even still, I couldn't fully relax. I laid down in my mom's room and I kept praying in my head. I kept repeating over and over, something like, in the name of Jesus Christ, whatever is messing with me is not welcome. You have to go. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not even saying I understand everything that's happening. But I know this. Once I re-entered that chaotic, drama-filled circle, my life started getting chaotic too. And once I started turning back toward faith, I started noticing things more clearly, like I could finally admit I wasn't okay and I needed protection and peace. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Shaken up, but also waking up. And I'm going back to church again tomorrow. So, I'm still getting that cold, prickly feeling just thinking about this. It started on a Sunday night, right after I put my little one, Mila, she's just over 2, down for bed. I'm talking the usual routine. She's sleepy but awake. I tuck her in. We do our little phrases, the whole thing. Then I head downstairs, and as I'm walking into the kitchen, I turn up the volume on the baby monitor app on my phone. It's one of those Wi-Fi ones, and the second I crank it up, I hear a voice. Not a recorded jingle, not static, an actual voice coming through the monitor. And then I hear Mila respond like she's having a conversation, like this is totally normal. The creepy part is, I only caught the very end of whatever the other voice said, because I'd literally just turned the volume up. But Mila's response made my stomach drop because she said something about turning off the lights, using this very specific little phrase that I always say to her. Like, word for word, the same weird little way I say it. And it felt like she was replying to someone who had just said that phrase to her first. For a second, I thought maybe it was me, like my own voice echoing somehow. But no, this sounded like someone else. I think it sounded like a woman, and for one horrifying heartbeat, it even sort of reminded me of my own voice. But I was so shocked, I don't trust my memory on that detail. My partner, Rowan, was right there. Just the two of us at home. We both heard it. We didn't even speak at first. We just looked at each other with that same, "Please tell me you heard that too" face. I got full body chills, like a pit opened up in my stomach. Because logically, it didn't make sense. Only Rowan and I have accounts for the monitor, and we've got two-factor authentication turned on. If someone tried to log in, we should have gotten alerts. We're logged in on our phones, and we also have a tablet that stays in the living room, right near me at the time, totally untouched. In Mila's room, there's basically nothing that could talk, just the camera and a sound machine. No smart speaker, no voice assistant, nothing. So I did the practical thing. I called the monitor company's support line. They pulled up the device details and told me the only logged-in devices were ours. Then they checked the camera's microphone feature, the two-way talk function, and they said it hadn't been used at all that day. Like, not once. So according to them, nobody had spoken through the monitor to her. And that honestly made me feel worse, because at least someone used the microphone is an explanation, even if it's a scary one. This was nothing. No trail, no cause. Then the next evening, Monday, early evening, around dinner time, I'm in my home office. And my office shares a wall with Mila's room. And I hear 2 knocks. Not little settling house noises. 2 sharp, distinct knocks on the wall, so loud I jumped in my chair. Then maybe 20 or 30 seconds later, 2 more knocks. Then about a minute later, the same pattern again. 2 knocks. 2 knocks. I remember sitting there frozen, listening like my body had decided it didn't want to move unless it absolutely had to. And then there's this other thing, and I don't even know how to talk about it without sounding ridiculous. And she just casually walks over to her little kid-sized chair, points like she's showing me something obvious, and goes, "He's right here. He's waiting. He's standing on the chair." Like it's the most normal thing in the world. I know toddlers imagine things. I know they invent friends and stories and whole invisible worlds. I know that. But the timing of it, piled on top of the monitor voice and the knocking, it's like my brain can't separate any of it. It all feels connected. even though I can't prove that it is. Since then, nothing dramatic has happened. No more voices, no more obvious knocking. But I'm not okay. I'm completely on edge, especially because Mila's the one in that room at night, and I hate that feeling of not being able to protect her from something I can't even explain. I even did the thing I never thought I'd do. I walked through the house with Sage, once everywhere, then again just in Mila's room. And what's wild is the knocking happened after I saged the whole house, which, if you believe in any of that, feels like the opposite of what's supposed to happen. And now I'm stuck in this awful place where nighttime makes my chest feel tight. I dread putting her to bed because I'm afraid something else is going to happen, and I won't know what to do in the moment. So that's where I'm at, trying to be rational, trying to believe there's a normal explanation, but also feeling this deep, instinctive fear that I can't shake. And honestly, if you were me, would you think paranormal? Or would you think sleep-deprived parent spiraling? Over and over. And I still don't have an answer. Okay, so I never know where to file this one in my brain. Paranormal feels too dramatic, but glitch in the Matrix is honestly closer. I'm 32 now, and I still don't have an explanation for what happened that night. I also don't tell it much because it sounds ridiculous on paper, like it's about a stupid cupcake. But it's one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me. This was when I was about 16 or 17. My friend, let's call her Maya, and I had just left this house party. Nothing wild, just a typical teen thing. On the way out, I grabbed a cupcake from the kitchen because I wanted a snack for later. Not right away, later. I was saving it like it was treasure. Maya and I decided we were going to be little rebels and sneak into the public pool after hours. You know the vibe. Warm summer night, quiet streets, that buzzing feeling like the world belongs to you because you're young and it's late. We figured we'd hop the fence, sit by the diving board, dangle our feet in the water, and smoke a little. And then I'd finally eat my cupcake like some kind of victory prize. And honestly, at first it was perfect. We made it in, we sat there with our feet in the pool, whisper laughing, passing a joint back and forth. The water was cool, the air was warm, and I'm holding this cupcake in my hand the whole time, waiting for the exact right moment. I remember thinking, this is going to be so good. Then, headlights. A cop car rolls up. Not speeding, not dramatic, just that slow, deliberate pull-in that makes your stomach drop instantly. Maya and I both panic in the exact same way. We bolt. We scramble off the board and sprint toward the fence, hearts pounding, trying not to slip. And right as we get there, I have this absurd, crystal-clear thought. I'm holding a cupcake. I cannot climb a fence with a cupcake. It's so dumb, but I remember being genuinely devastated for a second. Like, this cupcake had been my plan. I'd been guarding it the whole walk over there. And now I'm standing at a chain-link fence with flashing adrenaline in my veins, and I'm basically like, no, not like this. Maya is already halfway up the fence, and I'm whisper yelling, what do I do with the cupcake? I can't climb with one hand. And we have this whole frantic mini conversation about it, like a full-on strategy session, probably 10 seconds long, but it felt longer. I tried to pass it through the fence, but it was too big. I tried to wedge it between the links. No chance. Maya reaches down. I lift it up. She tries to take it, and it's just messy and ridiculous and taking way too long. Finally, we make the decision. Tragic, heartbreaking, completely stupid in the moment, but necessary. We're going to sacrifice it. So I turn and I throw the cupcake into the pool. And I mean, I really threw it. Not dropped it, not pretended. I launched it. We both watched it leave my hand. We both watched it hit the water. I heard it splash. I even remember, weirdly, how satisfying the splash sounded in the middle of all that panic. Then I climbed the fence with both hands, because now I can, and Maya and I take off down the street, laughing and breathless, like we got away with something huge. We're half terrified, half thrilled, finishing the last of the joint as we power walk into the night, convinced we're absolute legends. A little while later, maybe 10 minutes, give or take, I'm walking and I feel something in my hand. I look down, and my stomach drops in this slow, sick way. Because the cupcake is in my hand. Not smashed, not soaking wet, not gone. Just there. Like it never left. And then I freak out too. It was this bizarre mix of laughter and fear, like our brains couldn't decide if it was hilarious or deeply wrong. Because we both remembered sacrificing it. We both saw it hit the water. We both heard the splash. And yet here it was, sitting in my palm like it had been waiting patiently for me to notice. And yeah, before anyone asks, were we high? A little. But we weren't wasted. We weren't drinking at that party, and this wasn't the kind of high where you hallucinate a whole cupcake flying into a pool. Plus, there were too many steps. The whole fence situation, the passing it up, the it won't fit, the final decision to throw it. Those details were burned into both of our memories. I physically couldn't have climbed that fence with one hand. That was the whole problem. And the craziest part is, it wasn't like we forgot and found another cupcake. It was the cupcake. The one I'd been hoarding like a gremlin for the perfect moment. The one we mourned for like a full 10 seconds. Years later, I ran into Maya, randomly, at this bar. We hadn't really talked in ages, but somehow the story came up, and the second I mentioned the cupcake, she got this look on her face like, oh my God, that happened. We sat there like actual adults, sober, talking it through seriously. And she remembered it the same way I did. The fence, the cop, the splash, the laughter as we ran. And then the moment I stopped and looked down, and there it was. No explanation, no satisfying ending. Just one of those moments that makes you feel like the universe blinked for half a second and then carried on like nothing happened. And honestly, every time I think about it, I still get that same feeling. Like, I'm not saying cupcakes are haunted, but I am saying that cupcake refused to be abandoned. So picture this. I'm telling you about the little house we moved into back in June. It was built in 1963, and we're only the second people to ever really live here. The first owners were this older couple, the kind you can just tell took pride in the place. Neighbors told us the wife passed away in her late 80s, and the husband, he was in his 90s, eventually moved in with family because he needed more help. Honestly, it just made me feel kind of tender about the home, you know? Like it held a whole lifetime of ordinary, loving routines. And the funny thing is, I never felt anything off here. If anything, it felt calmer than my last apartment. Back there, I'd wake up in the middle of the night with that gross feeling of being watched. Here? Nothing like that. The only almost thing was our dog. His name's Biscuit. He's a sweet little nervous guy. The first couple weeks, he'd wake up and bark in the middle of the night, but we blamed it on moving stress. He still sometimes barks at the sliding glass door in the kitchen like it personally offended him. I swear it's just his reflection freaking him out. He's dramatic. Okay, so fast forward to the beginning of October 2nd actually, when we got home from our wedding. We'd gotten married in Maui, and someone there told us to hang up our flower leis for good luck. So we did. We hung them near the entryway, right by the front door, like a little reminder. We're home. We did it. We're married. I work from home, so during the day it's usually just me and Biscuit. And that afternoon, I don't know, it was one of those, days. The power flickered out 4 times in a row, like off, on, off, on. On the last flicker, something in the living room made this horrible, high-pitched noise. Not the TV. TV wasn't even on, but this little sound bar under it started shrieking like it was dying. I actually jumped. I yanked the plug out of the wall and the house went quiet again. At the time, I was like, okay, power surge. Electronics are weird. Whatever. I even checked online to see if the power company had maintenance scheduled. Didn't see anything, but I told myself maybe it just wasn't listed. I didn't spiral. Yet. The weirder part didn't happen until later that night. I'm in the kitchen and I hear this loud rustling sound, like someone aggressively handling a bunch of dried flowers or crinkly leaves. It came from the entryway. And I walk over, and there are the lays, on the floor, just sitting there. And I'm staring at them like, no, that doesn't make sense. Because they weren't balanced on a hook or draped over something flimsy. They were hung up with a nail, a solid nail. And we don't even have central air, no vents blasting, no big gusts, nothing that should have knocked them down. Biscuit absolutely loses it. He's barking like somebody's in the house. Like full body, hackles up, I'm about to protect this family with my entire soul mode. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt my stomach drop a little. Not full panic, just that cold little ripple of, wait, what? When Evan, my husband, got home, I told him right away. He went over, checked the nail, checked the lays, did that whole calm, logical person routine. He agreed it was strange, but we rehung them anyway. We made sure they were really secure. Then we kind of moved on. Made dinner, watched something dumb, tried not to give it too much power. And then a few mornings later, this is the part that got me. I'm home again, alone again, just working. And I hear it. That same loud rustling. Not subtle, like it wanted to be noticed. And poor Biscuit. He was shaking, not just barking, shaking. I ended up scooping him up and just holding him for the longest time, like a baby, walking around, whispering, "You're okay. You're okay." Even though I'm pretty sure I was also saying it for myself. So here's where I'm at. I don't know if I'm overreacting. Part of me is like, it's physics. It's the nail. It's the weight. It's humidity. It's literally anything normal. But then there's that other part of me that's standing in the hallway, remembering how loud that rustling was, how it happened twice, how my dog reacted, how weird the timing felt with the power surges. And I've already done all the little just-in-case things, you know? I cleaned the energy when we first moved in. I've lit incense after having people over. I've tried to make the house feel peaceful and intentional and safe. So when I ask, am I overreacting? I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm genuinely asking because I don't want to turn this into a scary story. I just want it to be a house we love, with a weird little mystery by the front door. Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How's your day going? I've been so excited for this moment, just being here with all of you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'm always reading them. Thank you so much for supporting the Paranormal M channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Okay, so this happened a long time ago, but I can still picture it like it was last week. I was around 11 at the time, and we were living in this small, kind of plain apartment. Nothing fancy, just warm and familiar. It was summer, the kind where the days feel slow and endless, and the nights are quiet enough that you can hear the buildings settling. Everything felt normal, safe even. My mom and my little sister were out of town visiting relatives for a few days, so it was just me and my dad at home. One night, I took a shower pretty late, nothing unusual. I remember stepping out into the bathroom with my hair still damp and the whole room warm from the steam. The mirror was completely fogged over, like a blank gray sheet. I grabbed my toothbrush and started brushing, half asleep, staring at that cloudy mirror without really seeing anything. And then, my dad walked in. He came up beside me at the sink with his own toothbrush, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. We stood there together, brushing our teeth in silence. And for some reason, both of us started watching the mirror as the steam slowly began to clear, like the glass was waking up. That's when it happened. As the fog thinned, we could suddenly see more of the reflection, and behind us, right there, like she'd been in the room the whole time, there was a woman. Or something that looked like a woman. She was standing a few feet back, calm as anything, brushing her hair like she belonged there. Slow, steady strokes. No rush, no panic. Just grooming, like it was her bathroom. I swear, my whole body locked up. I couldn't even breathe right. And I didn't look away because my brain was trying to make it make sense. I could see her clearly in the mirror, her shape, her arms moving, the motion of the hairbrush. And then, just like that, she was gone. Not like she turned and walked out. Not like she faded gradually. One second she was there, and the next second the space behind us was empty, like someone had cut her out of the scene. It couldn't have been more than 5 seconds total, but it felt like forever. My toothbrush slipped right out of my hand into the sink. I remember staring at my dad, waiting for him to say something, anything, to explain it. Because if he saw it too, then I wasn't crazy. And if he didn't, then I didn't even know what that meant. He looked at me, completely blank-faced, and goes, really calmly, "I didn't see anything." And I knew, right then, I knew he was lying. I kept asking him about it for days. I wasn't even being dramatic, I was just desperate. Like, "Dad, tell me what that was. Tell me you saw it. Tell me it was a trick of the light, or a neighbor, or literally anything." But he wouldn't budge. He just shrugged it off every time, like I was talking about a weird dream. I eventually stopped asking, but it didn't leave me. It sat in the back of my mind like a splinter. A few years later, maybe 3 or 4, we ended up watching one of those paranormal movies together late at night. I don't even remember who suggested it, but the vibe of it brought everything rushing back. And I finally said it again, real quiet, like I was testing the air. "Do you remember that night in the bathroom? The mirror?" And he didn't laugh. He didn't brush it off. He just went still for a second, stared at the TV, and then he admitted it. He said, "Yeah, I saw her. Clear as day." He told me he'd been just as shocked as I was, but he panicked, like real protective parent panic, and decided that if he pretended it didn't happen, maybe I'd forget. Maybe I'd feel safer. Maybe it wouldn't become a thing that followed me. And that's the part that gets me, honestly. The fact that we both saw it, at the same time, in the same mirror, and neither of us can explain it. We weren't messing around. We weren't telling ghost stories. We weren't even thinking about anything creepy. It was just a normal night in a normal apartment. Until it wasn't. To this day, I have no idea who or what that was behind us in that reflection. But I still think about her sometimes. Not even in a horror movie way. More like a question that never got answered. And if you've ever had something like that happen, something you can't file away neatly, I think you know exactly what I mean. Hey, so let me set the scene for you. I live out in what used to be nothing but quiet countryside, and now it's turning into a town right in front of my eyes. You know the kind of change I mean. Bulldozers, fresh roads that smell like tar, big signs for future grocery stores, rows of new houses popping up where deer used to cross. It's all still half finished, though. My little neighborhood sits right on the edge of it, woods on one side, and on the other, just long stretches of open land where you can see for what feels like forever. And from the very first night I spent here, I had this feeling, like I was being watched whenever I stepped outside. Not always in a dramatic way either. Sometimes it felt distant, like whatever it was noticed me the way you notice a passing car, not really interested. But other times it felt focused. Like I was the only thing in the whole yard that mattered. Especially after dark, when the sky was clear and the moonlight made the grass look almost silver. I'll be honest, I did the stupid thing we all swear we wouldn't do. I challenged it. Not because I wanted trouble, more like I needed to know I could walk into my own backyard without feeling like a guest who might be asked to leave. So I started doing this weird little routine. I'd step farther out into the yard, closer to where the trees get thicker, where the shadows swallow the light. I'd stay a little longer each time, and the whole time I'd talk, out loud. I'd say things like, "I'm just grabbing something real quick," or "I'm only walking out here because this is my yard, okay?" And always, I'd add something like, "No disrespect, I mean that." It probably sounds ridiculous, but it felt important. Like setting a boundary, but gently. Like, I see you, and I'm not here to fight you. Eventually, I started saying something else too. Something softer. "I respect that you were here first," I'd tell the dark. "I really do. And I don't mind sharing this space. But I don't appreciate being scared at my own home." And I meant it. I wasn't trying to claim the land like I owned the whole history of it. I didn't choose this place because I wanted to move into someone else's territory. Life just put me here. This went on for a long time, and at first the presence felt protective, almost threatening, like a warning. But over time, it shifted. The fear eased. The vibe changed from stay back to something more curious, like it was watching me because it was trying to figure me out. And then the feathers started. I know, feathers aren't exactly rare. There are birds everywhere out here. But here's the thing. For months, I didn't find a single one. Not one. Then suddenly, after those daytime moments started, where I'd feel that same awareness even in full sun, I began spotting feathers on the ground like little gifts. At first, it was one feather here and there. I would get genuinely excited, like a kid finding seashells. I started keeping them. I found this old glass jar in the kitchen and tossed them in, and it became this oddly comforting collection. Then it ramped up. 1 or 2 turned into 5. 5 turned into a dozen. Some days I'd walk the yard and find so many I'd start laughing like, "Okay, I get it. Hello?" Most of them were bright blue at first. Blue jay feathers. Those sharp little flashes of color that don't even look real against the dirt. Then other kinds started showing up. Softer ones. Speckled ones. A dark one that looked almost black until the sun hit it. And one morning, this is my favorite, something happened that I still can't explain without my skin prickling. That one beat everything for me. Even the glossy dark feather I found later, and the smaller, sturdier one that looked like it belonged to a young hawk. The day after the owl feather, I found a handful of little soft tufts nearby, like someone had shaken out a pocket of moonlight. That whole feather thing carried on for months, until the weather cooled and the birds thinned out. The jar is pretty full now, and honestly, the feathers started feeling like proof that whatever this was, it wasn't just my imagination running away with me. Like there was a conversation happening in a language I didn't fully understand. Then, a couple of weeks ago, something happened that knocked all the calm right out of me. It was late afternoon, not even fully dark yet. I was outside with my dogs, Rue and Miso, just letting them sniff around while I babbled to them the way people do when they love their animals and don't care who thinks it's weird. The air had that cold edge to it, and the sky looked washed out, like winter was practicing. And I felt the presence again. Only this time, it was close. I actually smiled without thinking. That's how familiar it had gotten, like noticing a neighbor you don't talk to, but you've seen enough times that it doesn't feel threatening anymore. And then, out of the corner of my eye, something moved. Not a squirrel, not a bird, not wind. A shape stepped out from behind a tree on the far side of the yard. I swear to you, my whole body reacted before my mind even caught up. Goosebumps climbed my arms like someone dragged ice across my skin. Every hair on my neck lifted. The back of my head went tight, like my instincts were trying to pull me backward. And for a second, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. It looked like a person, but not exactly. This figure was draped in fur and rough hide, the kind of clothing that doesn't belong in any modern day. There were bits of bone and sticks tied on, like ornaments, like tools, like warnings. And on its head was a skull. Not just any skull. It had antlers, huge, branching antlers, bigger than anything I've ever seen in real life. The skull sat like a mask, and behind the empty sockets, I could feel eyes, like something was looking through it. It met my gaze, locked on. And then it did the strangest thing. It nodded. Not aggressive, not rushed, just a slow, deliberate nod, like, I see you, I acknowledge you. It took one step, and it was gone. Not ran, not ducked, just disappeared in a way that made my brain scramble for an explanation it couldn't find. Rue and Miso started barking like crazy at something across the street, like they heard or saw a separate disturbance. But my third dog, Juno, the one who usually acts like affection is a personal insult, stood perfectly still, staring at the exact spot where the figure had been. And then Juno stepped closer to me, right up beside my leg. That's the part that keeps looping in my head, because I can explain away a lot of things. Shadows, nerves, stress, the mind playing tricks. But my dog acknowledged it. Not with a bark, not with fear, more like caution and recognition. So now I'm left holding this memory like a stone in my pocket. I don't know what it was. I'm not going to pretend I do. I don't know if it was something ancient or something passing through, or something that's been here longer than the town plans and construction crews and coming soon signs. All I know is, I used to feel watched like prey, and now it feels more like I'm being observed by something that's deciding what I am. And I can't tell if that makes me feel safer, or if it's the scariest part of all. So, I'm going to tell you about something that still makes my stomach do that slow, awful drop when I think about it. For context, I'm 26 now, but this happened when I was maybe 12 or 13, somewhere around 2011 or 2012. And I'll be honest with you, there are pieces that are fuzzy because of a head injury I had later on. Dates, small details, the exact order of a couple moments. It's not all perfectly stitched together in my head, but the feeling of it, that part is crystal clear. My family and I were road tripping like we'd done a bunch of times, one of those long hauls between states. I want to say we were headed from Washington down toward Oklahoma, but even that part flips around in my memory sometimes. Either way, it was one of those trips where the day has been nothing but highway, snacks, and everybody slowly getting quieter as the sun goes down. We had two vehicles because of all the luggage. I was in the SUV with my mom and my little sister. She was around 9. My older brother Ethan was in a smaller sedan with his girlfriend at the time, Mariah, who's his wife now, which is kind of funny considering this story still comes up at family gatherings. It was late. Like, properly night. We'd been driving through this stretch of road where pine trees packed in tight on both sides, like walls. The GPS, one of those old suction cup ones stuck to the windshield, kept saying we wouldn't hit another town for miles. And then we saw lights ahead. Not just one or two. A little cluster, like a town. And I remember my mom saying something like, "Maybe the GPS is out of date." Because back then, those things missed small places all the time. Ethan called my mom while we were still coming up on it. He sounded tired, like he was fighting sleep. He told her Mariah had already knocked out, and he didn't think he could safely keep going. My mom, who almost never admits she's tired, paused and said she was feeling it too. So we agreed we'd pull in, find a motel, sleep a few hours, and continue in the morning. Ethan slowed down and tucked in behind us so he could follow our lead into town. And that's when the weird part started. We passed a sign with the town's name on it, and my gut just twisted. Like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up with yet. I stared at the sign as we passed, trying to lock the name into my memory. I can't tell you what it said. And here's the part that still freaks me out. None of us can. Not my mom, not Ethan, not my sister. We all remember seeing it. We all remember saying it out loud. We even wrote it down later, more than once, because my mom was dead set on never accidentally driving through there again. But the name never stuck. It's like it slid right out of our heads. As we drove deeper into town, everything looked too still. You know how even quiet towns have something? A car going by, a porch light, a dog bark, trash in the gutter, anything that says, people live here. This place didn't have that. The streetlights were on, but they glowed this dull yellow-orange that made everything look sick. The buildings we passed were dark. No parked cars, no movement. And the air felt heavy, like the whole place was holding its breath. I didn't have the words for it back then, but now I know it was anxiety. That prickly feeling on the back of your neck where you suddenly feel watched. We ended up pulling off near a church sitting slightly up on a little rise. The church had one bright white light above the entrance. Clean, normal light. Like it didn't belong with the rest of the town. The parking lot was gravel, and it crunched loud under our tires. I remember thinking, okay, so it's not just me. I was walking near the edge of the light, trying to loosen my legs, when I heard gravel shift. Fast. Like something small sprinted. Across the lot there was this big dumpster sitting mostly outside the light's reach. I could only see the outline of it, but something moved behind it. Quick, low, and deliberate. My mom snapped her head toward the sound immediately, like she'd been waiting for anything to confirm her instincts. And she didn't hesitate. "Get in the car. Now." I remember backing up toward the SUV without turning around. I don't know why. I just couldn't make myself put my back to that dumpster. Ethan and Mariah stayed in their car, and Ethan helped my mom punch in a nearby motel on the GPS. Once it was set, we left the church lot and drove through the rest of town. It was the same the whole way, eerily clean. No trash, no stray signs of life, just those orange lights and empty streets. The GPS led us out to a gravel road that dipped down into this wide open clearing surrounded by thick woods. And sitting there, like it had been dropped out of nowhere, was the motel. Not a modern hotel, more like an old-school two-story L-shaped place with doors facing the parking lot. The check-in office was a separate little building off to the side, lit by one pale, hollow-looking light, the kind of light that makes skin look gray. My mom told us to stay in the cars while she went inside. The office had big windows so we could see her clearly. And this is where it still messes with me, because all of us saw something different. I swear, I saw an older man behind the counter. Thin, hunched, a face like he'd forgotten how to smile. He didn't look surprised to see my mom, just irritated she existed. But my sister later insisted she saw a younger guy, dark hair, tense, like he was annoyed and nervous at the same time. And Ethan said he saw someone else entirely, a middle-aged man with a beard who looked bored, like he couldn't care less about anything. Same moment, same window, 3 totally different people. My mom came out like she'd made a decision before she even stepped outside. She waved Ethan forward, and we parked in front of 2 rooms next to each other. She told us, "Only grab what you absolutely need. We're leaving early." We all agreed way too quickly. Inside, the room felt wrong. That's the simplest way to put it. The air smelled stale, like damp carpet and old cleaning chemicals that didn't quite do the job. My mom and I looked at the beds, and I guess my face gave me away because she said, almost quietly, "You don't want to touch them either, do you?" And I remember this weird little moment where I felt relieved, like, okay, it's not just me imagining this. My sister asked to shower, and my mom went to help her, but the water wouldn't turn on. So my mom called Ethan and asked if my sister could use their shower instead. A few minutes later, Ethan came back to our room fast, like he'd run. He pushed the door open too hard and startled both of us. He didn't even explain at first. He just said, "Pack up, right now. Mom, come here." My sister came in behind him looking pale and shaky, like she was trying not to cry. I asked her what happened, and it took her a second to force the words out. "There was blood," she said, "in the shower. Not like a tiny smear. Enough that it registered. Enough that she backed out and called Ethan, and Ethan called my mom. My mom didn't argue. She didn't go complain. She didn't ask for a refund. She just said, very calm and very firm, 'Put everything back in the car. Get in.' We loaded up and left immediately. We drove back through town toward the highway, and the second I saw those orange lights again, I felt that same awful certainty. We're not supposed to be here. But Ethan needed gas. Right at the edge of town, like the town was already shrinking behind us, there was a gas station. Bright lights, open sign, the whole thing. Still no cars, no employee vehicle, nothing. Ethan pulled up to the pump, and my mom pulled in right beside him. We all went inside together once he started pumping, grabbed drinks and snacks, paid, everything normal for about 30 seconds. And then we walked back out. I was walking next to Ethan, and I remember we were trying to laugh, talking about something dumb just to break the tension. Ethan finished pumping. He was putting the nozzle back when something moved across the far side of the lot. Both of our heads snapped up at the exact same time. There was a shed in the back corner of the station lot, half-shadowed, and behind it were trees, tall, dense, and black like a wall. 2 figures darted behind the shed. Fast. Too fast to be casual. Ethan's whole posture changed instantly. He didn't turn to look at me, just said, low and sharp, "Get in the car." And then, like the night itself leaned forward, 3 pairs of glowing eyes appeared above and beside the shed. Yellow amber, bright, fixed on us. And they weren't low to the ground. They were high, higher than the shed line, like whatever they belonged to was tall enough that the eyes sat above the roof edge. Ethan shouted, not a normal shout, a panic shout. "Get in the car! Now!" I ran. I jumped into the SUV so hard I think I slammed the door. Ethan dove into his car, and my mom peeled out right behind him the second she saw us moving. My mom kept asking what happened because she hadn't seen the eyes from her angle, but my sister had. She was pressed to the window, shaking, telling her through tears what we'd seen. Ethan confirmed it over the phone while he drove. Eyes, 3 sets, by the shed, too high. No one spoke for a few minutes after that. Just road noise, breathing, the sound of fear settling in your chest. We drove to the next town we recognized, an actual town with normal lights and cars, and checked into a Holiday Inn. Bright lobby, families, vending machines, all of it. Like reality had snapped back into place. And we stayed up for a while in one of the rooms, going over it again and again, trying to make it make sense. The next morning, we tried to look up the town. We couldn't find it. We tried older maps. We asked locals about a town a little ways back on that route. People looked at us like we were confused. They told us there wasn't anything out that way for miles. And that's the part that still sits with me years later. Not just the motel, not just the blood, not even the eyes. It's the way that town felt like it wasn't supposed to exist, and the way its name slipped out of all our minds like it had never been there in the first place. We don't talk about it constantly, but every so often someone will bring it up. Usually Ethan, usually with this quiet look on his face, and we'll all get that same little chill. Because whatever that place was, it left a mark on all of us. So I've always been a weird sleeper in this one specific way. Unless I'm completely out cold, I'm usually aware that I'm asleep. Like, I can still sense the room. I can still feel when something shifts. It's hard to explain without sounding dramatic, but it's been true for me forever. This happened a couple years back, and I still don't have a clean explanation for it. It was late, properly dark, and I was in my room asleep when I got this sudden, heavy feeling, like that instinctual drop in your stomach when you know someone is looking at you. I'm the kind of person who trusts that feeling because it's almost always right for me. I remember my eyes opening really slowly, like my body was bracing itself, and at the end of my bed, there was my mom. Except, okay, her name's Elaine in this story, because even now it feels unreal, like it happened to someone else. Elaine was standing right there at the foot of my bed, in the exact same soft t-shirt and pajama bottoms she'd been wearing earlier. My eyes adjusted fast enough that I could see her clearly, and what got me immediately was that she wasn't moving. Not shifting her weight, not breathing in a way I could notice, not doing that normal little human movement people do without thinking. And the vibe coming off her was wrong. Her posture looked normal at first glance, but the longer I stared, the more it felt like she was being pulled down, like her body was too heavy for itself. And her face, she had my mom's face, sure, but it didn't feel like it was her behind it. Her eyes were the worst part. They were the right color, the right shape, the right everything. But the feeling they gave me was like someone had copied her features perfectly and forgot to put the person inside. Like something was wearing Elaine the way you'd wear a coat, and it was doing a pretty good job, but not good enough to fool you up close. I genuinely thought, for half a second, maybe she was sleepwalking, or maybe she was standing there and zoned out. So I whispered, "Mom?" And then a little louder, "Mom! Mom!" Nothing. No blink, no reaction, no softness. Just that empty, locked stare like she was waiting for something. My bedside lamp was on the little table to my right, and the door is basically right there too. Like, if someone wanted to leave quickly, I would have heard it. But my brain was scrambling for logic, so I reached over and flipped the lamp on. I swear I looked away for the shortest moment, like 1 second, maybe less. And when I looked back, she was gone. Just gone. Like she'd never been there at all. And that's when the fear really hit. Not the nervous, jumpy kind. The kind that makes your whole body go cold, because your mind stops offering explanations and just goes, no, that wasn't normal. I shot out of bed and bolted down the hall to her room. I didn't even stop to think about how ridiculous I probably looked. I just needed to know. Elaine was in bed, dead asleep. Not just lay down asleep, like fully asleep. The kind where her breathing was deep and steady, and she was doing that little snore she gets when she's really out. And I know my mum, she takes forever to fall into that kind of sleep. She doesn't drop off instantly. I stood there for a second, staring at her, trying to get my heart to slow down, and then I finally woke her up because I couldn't hold it in. And she blinked at me, all confused and groggy, and went, "What? No. What are you talking about?" And that should have made me feel better, but honestly, it made it worse, because it confirmed what I already knew. Whatever I saw wasn't her. The whole thing couldn't have been longer than maybe 10 seconds, 15 at most. But it felt deliberate. Like it wanted me to wake up. Like it wanted to be seen. And I still don't know what it was. I don't know if it was there to scare me, or test me, or just watch. I don't know if it was trying to hurt me, or if it had already done what it came to do, and I just never realized. All I know is that I've never forgotten the feeling of those eyes. Her eyes. But not her eyes. So, for a long time, I kept hearing this noise. Just this low, shapeless sound in the background. Like the kind of thing you ignore because you assume it's nothing. The fridge, the pipes, the neighbors, whatever. But one afternoon, a few weeks back, I was home from work, stretched out on the couch, waiting for the time I needed to go pick up my kid from school, and I noticed something. It wasn't just noise. It sounded like a radio, like actual radio static. That thin, dusty shh sound, and then the weird little shifts like someone slowly turning a dial. At first I thought my brain was just playing tricks on me because I was tired. But then, the more I let myself relax, the clearer it got. Like the calmer I became, the more it tuned in. And then, I started hearing songs. Real songs. Different genres, different voices, sometimes something that sounded old, sometimes something that sounded brand new. The static never went away though. Always that analog hiss underneath, like the signal was coming from somewhere slightly off. Here's the part that messed with me. Some of the songs were completely unfamiliar, but I could catch lyrics, just little lines, and I'd write them down and search them later. And a bunch of the time, the songs were legit. They existed. Not stuff I knew, not stuff I'd ever played, just songs I somehow heard through this invisible radio-sounding thing in my room. But there was one song, one specific one, that I couldn't find anywhere. I tried everything. Different lyric searches, different combinations, humming it into apps, even searching the vibe and genre like a maniac. Nothing. It was like it belonged to nothing, and it got stuck in my head for days in a way that felt invasive, like it had roots. Then, a few nights later, I woke up because the music was loud. Not, "Oh, the TV is on." Not, "Someone left a speaker running." I mean, it was like my entire room was filled with it. Like the sound had no direction. It was everywhere at once, pressing against the walls, under the bed, in the air. and it was this old track I hadn't thought about since I was a teenager. Like one of those songs you forget exists until you hear 2 seconds and your whole past snaps awake. In my version, it wasn't Knocking Boots. It was Backseat Rhythm by some late 90s artist I swear I haven't heard since I was 14. And the creepy thing is, I never knew more than the hook back then. But that night, I knew whole lines. Like I'd been singing it forever. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even panic right away. I kind of enjoyed it. Because the feeling in my body wasn't fear. It was this heavy, blissy calm. The kind of calm where you could sit up if you wanted to, but you don't, because you feel so relaxed it's like your bones are melting into the mattress. Which is weird, because I've dealt with sleep paralysis since I was little. Normally, when that hits, I get the classic stuff. Pressure, trapped feeling, this sense that something is in the room with me. Terror, basically. But this is different. It resembles sleep paralysis in the "my body isn't doing what I want" way, but without the crushing dread. It's like I'm sedated, softly pinned, and I realized something that scared me later. I can only hear it when I'm relaxed. The more relaxed I am, the louder it gets, the clearer it gets. If my mind starts racing, it fades back into static. If I surrender into calm, it sharpens into music, like I'm the tuner. Like my nervous system is the dial. So of course I did the rational checklist. And I know how this sounds, but it feels slightly paranormal, like sleep paralysis always has, for me. Except this time it's not just dread. There's a signal. There's content. There are songs with structure and lyrics and emotion. And it makes me feel like, I don't know, like maybe there's a seam in reality. Like I'm hearing through a crack. And I keep thinking, why is it always when I'm alone? That's another thing. My sleep paralysis episodes, my worst ones, almost always happen when I'm alone. Not at work, not in public, not when I'm out doing normal life. But if I'm alone at home, or alone in a quiet room, it's like my body decides, yep, time to freeze. And then the fear comes. And it feels like a presence, like something noticing me. I've done the sleep study thing. I've done the mental health evaluation thing. I've had professionals nod at me and give me the most reasonable explanations. And I've tried so hard to swallow them, because I want to be a person who believes in boring answers. But this music thing, it's been pleasant mostly. And that's almost worse, because now I'm questioning myself. Like, am I being lured? Is it harmless? Is it trying to make me comfortable on purpose? And I keep circling the same questions in my mind. Do I engage with it? Do I ignore it? Do I try to make it stop? Could it be malevolent? And I probably should have started with the backstory, because this didn't come out of nowhere. Astral projection is something I've tried to avoid for years. Even saying that makes me feel ridiculous, but I'm being honest. Because with sleep paralysis, sometimes it doesn't just feel like I'm stuck. It feels like something is tugging at me, like a force trying to pull me out of myself. And right before the music started, I had this experience that I keep replaying. I was in bed. The paralysis hit. That familiar click where your body goes offline. And then I slipped out. Not metaphorically. I mean, I felt myself fall out of my body like my consciousness rolled off the bed. I turned and saw myself lying there. My own body, my own face, still, sleeping. And then I heard voices in the hallway outside my room. A man's voice, low and urgent, like he was talking to someone else who wasn't quite human, or maybe just wasn't quite here. And I heard him say something like, "Keep her contained. She's not from the inner side. She could be a problem." And I swear to you, my blood went cold. Except I didn't have blood, not in that moment. I was just awareness, panicking. Then it felt like someone came into the room. A woman presence. I couldn't see her, but I could feel her like a shift in pressure, like the air got heavier. And I was freaking out because I couldn't make my body move and I couldn't see what was in my room. And then, this is the part I can't stop thinking about. She turned on two radios. Two. Except I couldn't see them either. But I heard them click on, and suddenly there were two songs playing at once, layered over that static. And instead of making it worse, it calmed me down. It was like she did it on purpose. Like she knew I was panicking and she was trying to soothe me, the way you'd put on music for a kid having a nightmare. And I remember thinking, why would something evil try to calm me down? And then immediately thinking, unless that's exactly how you get someone to stop resisting. I remember trying to get out. I remember floating to the door, grabbing for the knob, trying to yank it open, and my hand kept sliding through it, like it wasn't solid, like I was trying to hold smoke. Eventually, I went back to my bed and kind of laid myself down on top of my body, like matching my shape to it. And as soon as I relaxed enough, I snapped back in. I sat straight up, gasping, heart pounding. The next day, I wrote it down. I told my therapist. Then life moved on, and I shoved it into the strange brain stuff folder and tried to forget about it. And now this music is happening. Now it's like, whenever I get relaxed enough, especially at night, it's back. The static, the tuning, the songs. Like that night left a door cracked open, and now the sound leaks through. So I'm asking you like I'm sitting across from you, elbows on the table, eyes a little too wide. Am I the only one who has experienced something like this? And what do you think it is? Is it just sleep paralysis evolving? Is my brain building sound out of nothing? Or is there actually something, somewhere, broadcasting through whatever layer I'm slipping into when my body goes still? And if it is something, what do I do? Because the more I think about it, the scarier it gets. Not because it feels bad, but because it feels real. Real enough that it makes me wonder if the world is thinner than we pretend it is. Like there's another world pressed right up against ours, separated by a veil you can accidentally breathe through when you're too calm, too alone, too quiet. Do I listen closer? Or do I stop relaxing and keep my hands on the wheel? Because whatever this is, might notice that I'm noticing it. Okay, so let me tell you about this place, because even now, thinking back on it makes my skin go a little tight, like the air itself is remembering. There's this small town called Marrowbrook, the kind of town where everyone waves, everyone knows your business, and every harmless old story gets repeated so many times it starts sounding like fact. And on the edge of it, just beyond the last few streetlights, there's an old estate people don't talk about unless they're trying to scare you on purpose. They called it the Renmore House. It was this towering Victorian mansion with sharp gables and a wraparound porch that sagged like tired shoulders. Ivy had crawled all over the brick for years, thick as a blanket, and the trees around it leaned in close like they were keeping a secret. The house had been empty forever, decades at least. The windows were dark, the gate half swallowed by weeds. And still, folks acted like it was listening. Then a couple moved in. Not James and Clara, different pair, Elliot and Mara. Young, hopeful, the kind of people who see rot and dust and think, we can bring it back. They bought the place cheap, and you could tell they were proud, like they'd rescued something. The first night they slept there, Mara told me the lights started acting strange. Not just flickering like bad wiring. No, it was patterned. Like somebody was tapping out a slow little code. Bright, dim, bright, dim. Pause, and then again. Elliot, of course, did the practical thing. Old house, he said. Old electrical. He even laughed, like he was trying to shame the fear out of the room. But Mara couldn't shake the feeling that the house was doing it on purpose, like it wanted them to notice. And then came the smells. That's the part that gets me the most, honestly. Because you can explain a draft. You can explain creaky floors. But a scent, strong enough to fill a room, appearing out of nowhere? That's different. One minute, she'd be unpacking dishes, and suddenly the kitchen would reek of honeyed roses, sweet and thick like a funeral arrangement left too long in heat. Then it would vanish, and a few hours later she'd catch the sharp, bitter sting of burnt bread, like someone had forgotten toast in a dark corner. Sometimes it was wet soil, that cold garden smell, like freshly turned earth after rain. And once, she swore it was smoke and myrrh, like incense drifting through a church that wasn't there. It wasn't constant. That was the thing. It came like a visitor. And it always seemed to happen when Mara was alone. One evening, Elliot drove into town to pick up supplies. Paint rollers, wood filler, all that restoration stuff. Mara stayed behind in the parlor with a book, trying to ignore how enormous the house felt at night. She said she was reading the same paragraph over and over because the silence was too loud. Then the temperature dropped. Not slowly, instantly. Like someone had opened a freezer door inside the walls. She looked up, expecting maybe a window had slipped open, but the curtains weren't moving. Still, a gust ran through the room, curling around her ankles and up her spine, and she felt this soft touch. Like lips. Not a peck, not something playful, just a delicate brush against her cheek, so gentle it was almost tender. After that, it escalated. The smells became more frequent, stronger. The lights began to pulse even when no one was near a switch, and Mara started waking up at night with the strangest sense of being watched. No, not watched. Waited for. Then came the night she woke to the feeling of a kiss. Right on the mouth. Warm, unhurried, almost affectionate. She sat bolt upright so fast she nearly knocked the breath out of herself. Elliot was asleep beside her, mouth slightly open, dead to the world. The room was still. No footsteps, no movement. Just the lingering sensation, like somebody had been there and only just left. The next morning she tried to laugh it off. "Stress dream," she said. "Old house nerves." But her eyes didn't match her voice. So they did what people always do when something doesn't make sense. They looked backward. They dug into history. They found old records at the library, deeds, yellowed newspaper clippings. A family that had once lived there, the Holloways, reclusive and wealthy, and by all accounts, deeply unhappy. One by one, things happened to them. A fall down the grand staircase, a drowning in the estate's pond despite being an excellent swimmer, an illness that arrived too quickly and left too cleanly. Every death filed neatly under tragedy, yet the whispers in town always used a different word. Curse. And then, in the oldest local paper they could find, there was this half-forgotten story, more folklore than fact. A legend about something hungry that lingered in Renmore House. Not a single ghost, not one angry spirit, but a cluster of presences, like shadows wearing different faces. People didn't call them demons exactly, not at first. They called them the lingering ones, the unseen guests. But the descriptions were always the same. The flickering lights, the sudden scents, the intimate touches. As if the house wanted to confuse you with comfort. As if it wanted you to mistake invasion for affection. Mara told me she hated that part most, the tenderness of it, because it made her second-guess her own fear. Then came the storm. You know those nights where the sky doesn't just rain, it punishes? Wind clawing at the roof, thunder shaking the windows, the whole world sounding angry. That was the night everything broke open. The lights went mad, not flickering, strobing. Hallway bulbs flashing like a warning. Lamps in the parlor brightening until the shades glowed, then plunging into darkness. The smells poured in all at once. Roses and smoke and damp earth and burnt bread, layered so thick Mara said she tasted them on her tongue. She tried to call Elliot's name, but the house swallowed her voice. And then she did something she swore she'd never do. She spoke to it. Not to the house exactly, to whatever was inside it. She stood in the middle of the parlor, shaking, with rain battering the windows, and she said, out loud, "Please, please stop. We didn't come here to disturb you. We just want to live. We just want peace." There was a long, awful pause, and then everything went still. The lights steadied, the air settled. Even the storm outside seemed to hold its breath for half a second. Mara said she started crying, not loudly, just tears slipping down her face, because for the first time, it felt like she'd been heard. And that's when she felt it. A kiss, soft, lingering, placed right on her forehead. Not mocking, not hungry. The next morning, the house was quiet. Not the uneasy kind of quiet where you're waiting for the next sound, just normal, peaceful even. The lights behaved, the air smelled like old wood and dust and lemon cleaner. No roses, no smoke, no damp earth drifting through closed rooms. They stayed after that. They kept restoring the place, sanding floors, repainting trim, opening curtains that hadn't seen daylight in years. But Mara told me something changed in them. Because once you've lived in a house that touches you back, once you've felt something unseen lean close enough to kiss you, you don't ever fully forget it. Renmore House became their home. But it was never just their home. And sometimes when Mara talks about it, her voice gets softer at the edges, like she's careful not to offend something listening from the dark corners of memory. Like whatever lived there didn't leave completely. It just stepped back, out of sight, not far. Okay, so I've got to tell you about something that still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. This happened one night when I was driving home with my daughter, Maya, and her boyfriend, Eli. Maya was 16 at the time, and I'd been teaching her how to drive, so she was behind the wheel. I was in the passenger seat doing that classic parent thing, trying to look calm while silently watching everything, and Eli was in the back seat, half on his phone, half watching the road. It was late, maybe around midnight, give or take. Not dead quiet late, but late enough that the city had thinned out. A few cars here and there, streetlights humming, that kind of mood. We were heading along this stretch where the road starts to rise and turns into an overpass, with freeway on-ramps and off-ramps branching nearby. If you know the area, you know it has this weird, open feeling, like there's nowhere to hide, but also lots of shadow. We're coming up on the base of the incline, maybe 100 feet away, when we see something move across the road. At first I think, oh, some big dog. But the second my eyes really catch it, I get this instant, wrong feeling. It was large, like wolf-sized, but too skinny. And the way it ran, this is hard to explain unless you've really watched animals move. But I could see the front legs lifting, tucking under, touching down, and then the back legs following. Like a dog's gait, totally four-legged, except something about it looked unnatural. Like the proportions weren't quite right, or the motion was almost too smooth. I didn't say anything out loud because I didn't want to freak Maya out while she was driving, but I glanced over at her. And she glanced at me at the exact same time. That's the part that gets me, because we both had the same face, that confused, uneasy, "Did you just see that?" look. No words, but total silent agreement. The thing makes it across the street, heading toward our side, and we keep rolling forward. Then we hit a red light. And now we're sitting there, waiting. I remember thinking, okay, It's going to come along the sidewalk and pass in front of us. Any second now. There weren't pedestrians, no one walking, no group of people, just the three of us and a few distant headlights. So I'm watching that edge of darkness where it should appear. And then it does. Except, it's not a dog. It's a man. This pale-faced man comes out of that dim patch like he'd been there the whole time, except that makes no sense. He's riding a bicycle, slow and steady, like this is the most normal thing in the world. And his face, listen, his face is what made my skin go cold. His eyes looked like two dark vertical slits, not normal eyes. Not like, oh, his pupils were weird, like genuinely wrong. And then he had this wide grin, stretched too far, like someone trying to imitate a smile without understanding how a real one works. He rides right past the front of our car. And then, this is the moment I can't shake, he turns his head toward us. Slowly, deliberately, like he already knew we were watching. And the feeling that came off him, I don't even know what word fits. Heavy, ominous, like a warning, like standing too close to something you're not supposed to notice. I didn't even have to speak at first. I looked at Maya and she looked at me, and I could tell she felt it too. Her whole posture changed. Finally, I go, quietly, "Maya, you saw that, right?" And she nods, eyes still forward, stiff as a board. "Yeah." I swallow and say, "And you saw what ran across the street a second ago?" And I'm like, "Okay, good. That's what I saw too." And then she hits me with the question that made my heart sink all over again. But if it was a dog, where did it go? And where did that man come from? And I just sat there, staring ahead, because I didn't have an answer. That animal was big, Great Dane big, maybe bigger, tall at the shoulders, long body like a shepherd or husky type. And I swear to you, I saw all four legs moving. It didn't dart into an alley. It didn't slip behind a parked car. There was nowhere for it to vanish to. On that side of the road, there was a concrete barrier and this sloped area leading up, plus fencing and a sound wall, just open, exposed space. No bushes, no doorway, no corner, nothing. And yet, somehow, what crossed as an animal did not come out the other side as an animal. What came out was that man on the bike, with that face, with that grin, with that awful, crushing feeling in the air. The light turned green and Maya drove on, and none of us talked for a minute. Even Eli got quiet in the back, like the whole car had decided to hold its breath. We made it home. Nothing followed us. No dramatic ending. Just that one moment that doesn't fit anywhere in my brain. But I'll tell you this, even now, years later, if I drive near that overpass late at night, I catch myself scanning the road, half expecting to see something run across again. And I still don't know what we saw. I just know it started as one thing, and then it wasn't. And whatever it was, it felt like it wanted us to feel afraid. So, I work nights at a small residential home where we support adults with autism and other intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's usually pretty quiet, honestly. When I first started, I only had 2 residents on my shift. Both of them were calm, easy to be around, predictable. The kind of nights where you make coffee, do your checks, and it's peaceful. Then we took in a third person. I'll call them Marin. Marin was different. Not in a hard-to-manage way at first, more like you could tell they carried a lot. Physically, Marin needed a lot of support. Power chair, limited mobility, help with basic things. Mentally, though, They were actually pretty sharp, high-functioning in a lot of ways. But there were definitely mental health pieces going on. The first few days, Marin tried to be social. They'd ask to hang out, sit in the common area, try to join conversations with the other two residents. But over time, that faded. They started spending more and more time in their room, and eventually it became very clear. They wanted to be alone. Like, really alone. They didn't want anyone coming in unless they specifically asked. And then there was the talking. Marin would shout at people that nobody else could see, like full-on arguments, late at night, as if someone was standing right in front of them. They said it was family members. They said they could communicate with them telepathically. Sometimes it sounded almost normal, like bickering. But other times it would get dark fast. I remember standing in the hallway during one of my rounds and hearing Marin say something like, "If I could hurt them, I would." And then a pause, like they were listening, and then, "I can't control my body. If you took over, you could do it for me." That stopped me cold, because they weren't joking. It didn't feel like they were trying to scare anyone. It felt like they genuinely believed they were in some kind of negotiation with someone. It was unsettling in a way that's hard to explain, because I've worked around all kinds of behaviors, and I'm not easily shocked. But it made the house feel different. Like the air got heavier. One night, Marin asked me if we had a Bible in the home. I did. It was one of those things we keep around because it's comforting for some residents. So I handed it over without thinking much about it. An hour later, I went to check on them. Pages, everywhere. They'd ripped out chunks, like handfuls of pages, just torn right out. I asked, "Hey, what happened?" Marin looked at me like it was obvious and said, "I was reading it. It made me mad." Then they asked me to take the cross necklace off them, the one they'd been wearing since they arrived. I asked why, and they shrugged and said, "I don't want it anymore." After that, Marin's vibe changed. They'd stare off into space like they were watching something just out of view. And sometimes I'd catch them staring at me. Not just looking, staring like they were trying to figure me out. And then I'd hear it, under their breath. Quiet, sharp, nasty little words. Stuff like, "You're so disgusting," or "I hate you," or just really cruel things. Every time I'd go, "What did you say?" Marin would snap back like they'd been woken up. Their eyes would refocus, and they'd say, "I didn't say anything," or "I'm just talking to myself." And I'm telling you, it didn't feel like a typical outburst. It felt like something slipping in and out. Like there were moments where Marin wasn't fully there with me. Eventually, Marin decided they wanted to transfer to another home. They said they were tired of one of the roommates messing with them. So the move happened. And you'd think that would have been the end of it, but it wasn't. There's this spot in the hallway, right outside a closet, where I swear it feels like something is standing there. Not like I see a person. It's more like, you know when you walk into a room and immediately feel like you're not alone? Like your body reacts before your brain can explain anything? That's what it's like. During the day, it's fine. Bright, normal, no big deal. But at night, I won't go down that part of the hallway without turning the light on first. Even with the light on, I still rush. I don't linger back there. I don't want my back to that closet. It makes my skin prickle. And here's the part that really messes with me, because it's not just me. One of the residents, Drew, used to never care about doors. He'd wander out to the living room half asleep, leave doors open, didn't matter. Now, he closes everything. He wakes up and the first thing he does is go around shutting doors like it's part of some routine he can't skip. Bathroom door, bedroom doors, closet doors, and especially the room Marin used to stay in. Drew keeps that door closed like it's a rule carved into stone. He'll literally walk behind me and check that I shut doors all the way. If I leave one cracked, he fixes it. and he'll go into his own room and his roommate's room without hesitation, but he won't go into Marin's old room. Not to hang out, not to look around, only to push the door closed again, like it needs to be sealed. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I've thought about cleansing the place, like sage, prayer, whatever people do when a house feels off. But I hesitate because Drew is sensitive, and I don't want to bring in something that could upset him, or make things worse, or even just scare him. And there's one more thing that still bothers me, even separate from all the present stuff. Marin's background made no sense. Between agencies, multiple people trying, nobody could trace where they actually came from. They had a birth certificate, but the mother listed on it, it was like she didn't exist. No records, no trail, nothing. The birth state didn't match anything anyone could verify. And Marin had clearly had surgeries in the past, scars, medical needs. Yet there were no hospital records anyone could find. No next of kin, no relatives, nothing. To the point where the company had to go through a whole process to get them issued an ID number and basic documentation, like they were a person who somehow slipped through the cracks of every system. And I know how that sounds. I do. If someone else told me this story, I'd probably raise an eyebrow. But I was there. And now I'm the one walking that hallway at 2 a.m., lights on, heart beating a little too hard, while Drew quietly moves behind me making sure every door is shut, especially the one Marin used to sleep behind. And every night, when I pass that closet, it feels like something is waiting in the corner, listening. So, this happened when I was a kid, around 2012, I think. I was maybe 10 or 11. My mom, Tanya, had been dating this guy named Rick for a couple years, and eventually she decided we were all going to move into his place. And it's weird because I don't remember a lot of houses from when I was growing up. Like, most places are just blank. But that house, I remember it way too clearly. The layout, the lighting, the feeling of it. Like it left a thumbprint on my brain. I was one of those kids who loved spooky stuff. I'd stay up watching ghost shows and anything paranormal I could find. But I wasn't the kind of kid who expected something to actually happen to me, you know? I wasn't walking around scared all the time. But about 2 weeks after we moved in, I started feeling off. Constantly. Like this low-level anxiety I couldn't explain. Not, I think I saw something fear. More like my body was reacting before my brain could make up a reason. Just this steady uneasiness, like the air in that house was heavier than it should have been. After a month or so, we got into this routine, weekend movie nights. We'd all pile into the living room, watch something late, and I'd always fall asleep on the couch. I didn't have my own room yet, so the couch was basically my spot. And every single time I woke up in the middle of the night, the TV would be off, the room would be pitch black, and I'd realize my mom and Rick had gone to bed without waking me. It sounds normal, but the second I opened my eyes, I'd get hit with this intense fear, like my stomach dropped and my skin tightened. Like something in the dark was present, not visible, just there. I'd end up sneaking into my mom's room and whispering, asking if I could sleep next to her because I couldn't calm down. And she'd let me, but I could tell she didn't fully get why I was so freaked out. Then one night, this was the last time I ever slept out there. I woke up and it was darker than usual. No TV glow, no hallway light, nothing. And Rick's cat, this gray cat named Miso, was perched on the back edge of the couch right beside me. The second I saw her, this wave of something is wrong hit me so hard it was like I'd been slapped awake. And then Miso's whole body changed. She shot upright, her fur literally lifted, like it stood on end, and she started doing this deep, low growl I had never heard from her before. Not a hiss, not playful. This was serious, like warning level. And she was staring, locked in, toward the kitchen. toward this one area I'd been avoiding without even realizing I was avoiding it. I didn't think. I just ran, like full sprint, bare feet, heart banging, straight into my mom's room. I remember almost tripping because I was going so fast, and I begged her, actually begged her, not to make me sleep in the living room again. I was shaking so badly she could tell it wasn't me being dramatic. She believed me after that. About a week later, my cousin Jade came to visit. She was older, maybe 15 or 16. Since she was there, Rick said we could sleep in his son's old bedroom, the one that hadn't been used in years. So we're in this room that feels kind of stale, like it's been shut up for a long time. Jade sleeps on the side closest to the door, and I'm on the inside, facing the wall. And in the middle of the night, I wake up and I really have to pee. Like, bad. But I'm still messed up from that couch night, so I decide I'm not going alone. I roll over and start tapping Jade's back, whispering her name. Nothing. I tap harder, say her name again. Still nothing. She doesn't move an inch, just sleeping, facing away from me. I froze. And I remember thinking, nope, I'll hold it. I don't care. I'm not going anywhere. So I start turning back toward the wall, trying to make myself smaller, trying to just go back to sleep. And as I turn, my eyes land on the foot of the bed. There's someone sitting there. Not on the bed, like sitting the way someone sits on a chair. But there was no chair. They were upright, perfectly still, posture straight like a mannequin. At first, my brain can't process it. It's dark, and my eyes are trying to adjust, and I'm thinking maybe it's a jacket on something. Maybe it's my imagination. But then the shape becomes a person, and I realize it looks exactly like Jade. Same hair, same face, same outline, except wrong, because the Jade beside me is still asleep, breathing evenly, not moving, and the one at the foot of the bed is turned toward me, smiling. This wide, calm smile like she's posing for a photo. Her face was clear, and her body looked almost lit from the inside, like she was softly glowing in the darkness. And at the same time, she looked thin, not like skinny, like transparent. Like if you stared long enough, you could almost see through her. I have never felt fear like that. Not I'm scared fear. Not I saw something creepy fear. This was primal. Like my body decided, you are not safe right now. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just stared for a second that felt like a year, and then I yanked the blanket over my face and curled up as tight as I could. I stayed like that for what felt like hours, just listening, waiting, praying I'd fall asleep. Eventually, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember is morning light. I was desperate to tell them. I told my mom, I told Jade, and Jade, being Jade, just laughed and messed with me, like, oh yeah? Well, I saw you crawling on the ceiling last night, and she cracked up like it was hilarious. And after that, I stopped talking about it for a long time. Years. Because part of me was like, maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was a kid. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe my brain made it up. But deep down, I never believed that. Not really. Because I can still see it in my head. I can still feel what it felt like. And then, more recently, I brought it up to my mom again, and she didn't brush it off. She got this look on her face like she'd been waiting for me to say it. She told me that house freaked her out too, that she always felt uncomfortable there. That honestly messed with me even more, because it made it feel real, like it wasn't just in my head. And now, every time I learn something new, like people talking about astral projection, or stories about mimics, things that copy someone you know, I think back to that night. because I still don't know what I saw. Was it Jade, like some weird out-of-body thing? Or was it something pretending to be her? All I know is, it's been more than a decade, and I still get chills when I picture that smile at the foot of the bed. Okay, so let me give you a little context first, because the way school worked where I grew up matters. I'm from Malaysia, and back when I was in secondary school, we didn't do that American thing where you switch classrooms every period. We basically lived in the same classroom all day, and the teachers rotated in and out. So your classmates were your people. Same faces, same seats, same everything, every single day. All right, so this happened in 2018, and I was 16. And honestly, the reason I skipped school is so embarrassing. I wasn't sick or anything. I just woke up late, stared at the clock, and went, nah, like full-on teen logic. I stayed home the entire day, in my room, scrolling on my phone and rotting in bed. Then around lunchtime, I got this call from my friend Ina. She was our class monitor, the one who took attendance. And the second I answered, I could hear it in her voice. She sounded panicked. She goes, "Are you in school today?" And I'm like, "No, I've been home. Why?" Silence. And then she just loses it. Like she genuinely freaks out. Because apparently when she was counting heads earlier that morning, she looked up and saw me sitting at my desk, like in my seat, and she marked me as present. She even told me she counted the full class, 26 out of 26, including me. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe she just counted wrong. But then she says, "No, other people saw you too." And that's when my stomach did this weird drop. She starts listing names. Nadia swore she saw me in the hallway right before the first teacher came in, like I was just standing there, waiting like normal. Farah said she saw me walking up the stairs to the second floor, like I was coming from the canteen area. And then Joanne, this one still creeps me out. Joanne said she saw me walking beside Hazik, like I was literally right next to him, heading toward our classroom. So when the first class started, the teacher asked, "Where is she?" And Ina, being totally sure I was there earlier, told the teacher I probably went to the toilet, or maybe the office. Because in her mind, I was definitely in school that day. But time passes. I don't show up. The seat stays empty. And that's when she starts to get that awful feeling, like something is wrong, and she calls me. And I'm not gonna lie, when I heard all of that, I felt cold, like actually cold. Because if it were just one person, I could shrug it off. People mistake faces all the time. But multiple people? Different places? Someone even counted me like I was physically there? It started to feel less like a misunderstanding and more like, I don't know, like something was wearing me for the morning. And here's the thing, my school was old, like properly old, more than a century. You know the kind of place where the hallways always feel a little dim even in daylight? The kind of building that's been through wars, evacuations, who knows what. And people had stories, of course they did. There was even this one incident people used to talk about. This girl who supposedly got possessed and started writing words in Arabic, even though she didn't study it. Stuff like that. You'd hear it and laugh, but it still sits somewhere in the back of your mind. So after that day, I kept spiraling between two thoughts. Either my classmates were all just weirdly mistaken at the same time, or something was copying me. And the creepiest part is, this wasn't even the first time something like that happened in my life. But she didn't switch on any lights. And that felt odd, because my mom is not the type to walk into a dark room for no reason. So I got curious, right? I thought, what is she doing in my room? So I follow her. I walk into my bedroom, and it's pitch black, and there's nobody there. No mom, no movement, nothing. Just me standing alone in the dark, with my heart suddenly hammering like I'd run upstairs. And I remember thinking, no, I saw her. I saw her like a real person, not like a ghost in movies, nothing see-through, nothing floaty. It looked exactly like my mom, solid, normal. That realization messed with me for a long time. And then later, years later, my younger sister told me she saw me in my room once. Except here's the thing, I wasn't even in the same city. I was away for school at the time. So, yeah. Sometimes I wonder if it's just coincidence stacked on coincidence. People mixing up faces, shadows in old houses, your brain filling in blanks. But other times, I don't know. It feels like there's something that likes to imitate us. Like it watches, memorizes, and then tries on your shape when it feels like it. And honestly, even now, I still don't know which explanation is worse. So, this is one of those stories I still feel in my chest when I talk about it. Back in 2017, I was 19, and I'd never really lived away from home before. Then, suddenly I'm hauling bags up a stairwell and moving into this student flat in Sheffield with my girlfriend at the time. Her name was Maya. It was one of those places that had clearly been done up to look fresh. Gray walls, shiny fittings, that faint smell of new paint that makes you feel like you're starting a brand new chapter. And honestly, parts of that time were great. We laughed a lot. We had friends over, did the whole student life thing, walked around the city like it belonged to us. But that flat was the most terrifying place I have ever lived. I can't even tell you when it started exactly. It just crept in. Little things at first. The weird part was, we were on the top floor, and the windows barely opened, like the building was sealed shut. Yet, things moved like there was a gust tearing through. A magazine would slide right off the table like someone had flicked it. The TV remote would end up on the floor when I swore it had been sitting on the arm of the chair. Sometimes the television would switch itself on, go black, then come on again. Like it was trying to get your attention and then pretending it hadn't. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The worst part was the feeling. You know when you can sense someone behind you? Like your body just knows? Imagine that, but turned up to 100. No matter where I stood in that flat, kitchen, hallway, bedroom, it felt like something was right behind me. Close, breathing close. And not just a presence, not something neutral, something mean. I'm not being dramatic. My skin would prickle. The hairs on my arms and neck would stand up and stay that way. For weeks, months. I started dreading going back after classes or work. And if I knew I'd be alone there overnight, I'd drink enough to knock myself out. Because being awake in that place by myself felt like volunteering to be hunted. It felt like I was being watched by something that wanted me scared, something that enjoyed it. I'd turn, fast, to catch it. Nothing. Then that sick feeling would slide right back behind me again, like it was playing some horrible little game. You can look, but you'll never see me. And then, one completely random night, everything boiled over. It was about 1 a.m. Maya and I were in bed, fully sober, just trying to get warm under the covers because that flat was always freezing no matter what we did. We'd turned the lights out. We were settling, that slow drift towards sleep. Then, right as my eyes closed, I heard something in the next room. And I mean, it wasn't a creak. It wasn't the building settling. It sounded like someone had exploded into the living room and started throwing the place around. like furniture was being dragged, slammed, shoved. The chair, the sofa, heavy, violent movement. The kind of noise that makes your body go rigid before your brain even catches up. It lasted only a few seconds, and then it stopped. Dead silence. And in that silence, you do what you always do, don't you? You try to save your own sanity. You tell yourself, maybe I dreamt it. Maybe I'm half asleep. Maybe it was outside. But then Maya, in the dark, whispered, "Did you hear that too?" And the moment she said it, my stomach just dropped. Because if she heard it, it was real. I didn't even know what else to do. I started praying, quietly, like if I spoke too loud, I'd invite whatever it was closer. After that first outburst, the noises kept coming in little bursts, softer but unmistakable. The click of something hitting the floor, the faint thud of a pen dropping, slow footsteps where footsteps shouldn't be. Like something was moving around out there, calm now, taking its time, because it knew we'd heard it. We stayed a few more months after that, and, weirdly, nothing ever got as intense as that night again. But the feeling never truly went away. It was like the flat had shown us what it could do, and after that, it didn't need to prove anything. Then one late evening, I was walking home from work, around 11:45 p.m., and I noticed a small group gathered near the entrance to our building. I remember thinking it was just a bunch of rowdy teenagers hanging around. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't that at all. It was a ghost tour. And I slowed down just enough to hear the guide say something like, "You're standing in one of the most haunted parts of Sheffield city center." I actually laughed, this short, stunned laugh, because it felt so ridiculous and yet so perfectly, horribly fitting. After that, I went down my own little rabbit hole. Turns out we've been living in a building off Blackwell House, right by Blackwell Square. And that square, historically, was tied to public punishments and executions. Centuries of it. The kind of history that doesn't just disappear because someone paints the walls and installs modern lighting. And I don't know what I believe, truly. I'm not someone who goes looking for ghosts, but I know what that flat felt like. I know what we heard. And I know I never, ever want to step foot inside that place again. I've got a couple other stories too. Nothing like this one, thankfully. Those are actually kind of nice. So, this was about 3 years back, when I was living in Valencia, Spain. I'd just come off this long stretch of summer nights, too many parties, too many drinks, and I'd made this promise to myself. 1 full month sober. No, just one. No exceptions. Clean reset. Now, I've always had this odd little thing happen sometimes. Not often, like not even monthly, but every once in a while I'll walk into a place and get this instant sense that I don't know how to explain it, that there's something else there, like a shift in the air. Usually it's an uncomfortable feeling, like my body clocks it before my brain does. But here's the funny part. In all the time I'd been in Spain, I never got that feeling. Not once. I'd lived there long enough that it started to feel like a non-issue, like maybe I'd grown out of it. Until that night. It was late, maybe around 12:30 or 1, and I was in bed reading, totally sober, just quiet and settled. And out of nowhere, I got that familiar sensation. Someone else is in the room. Except this time, it wasn't scary. It was actually kind of warm. Like the feeling you get when you realize you're not alone, but it's someone you trust. I remember pausing, looking up from the page, and sort of listening to the silence. And then I just went back to reading. Like, okay then. No big panic, no dread, just this calm awareness. Eventually my eyes started to blur, so I shut the book, clicked off the lamp, rolled onto my side, and tried to fall asleep. And then, honestly, I swear to you, a hand slapped my thigh. Not hard enough to hurt, not playful either, just a slap. A very clear, physical thwack, like someone was right there next to me. I shot upright so fast my heart felt like it punched my ribs. I flicked the light on immediately, fully expecting to see someone standing at the foot of the bed, or maybe some shadow in the corner. Nothing. The room looked completely normal. Door closed. No movement. No weird sounds. Just me, breathing like I'd sprinted. I remember sitting there for a second, rubbing my leg like I was trying to prove to myself it happened. And I was definitely creeped out, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't terrified. It was more like I didn't know what category to put it in. So I did this really stupid, very human thing where I sort of shrugged to myself like, right, sure, okay, and I went back to sleep. The next day I was just hanging around, and my phone rang. It was my older brother, Declan, calling from home in Ireland. And that alone was weird, because Declan and I weren't exactly the kind of siblings who called just to chat. We were close, sure, but more in that send a meme, see you at Christmas way. So when I saw his name pop up, I actually sat up like, is something wrong? I answered, and he was totally normal. Just chatting, asking how work was, how I was doing, what I'd been up to, like a casual check-in. We talked for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then his voice shifted a little, like he was about to tell me something he wasn't sure he even believed himself. And he goes, okay, the strangest thing happened to me last night. I swear, the blood drained out of my face. I'd almost pushed my own experience aside by then, like I'd filed it away as some half-dream, some weird muscle twitch, something my brain made up. But the second he said that, I just knew. I told him, all right, tell me. And he says, last night, I was lying in bed, must have been around 2 in the morning, and I felt a hand, like, squeeze my thigh. And there was this long pause, like we were both suddenly listening to the silence on the line. I remember my skin prickling, arms, neck, everything. That horrible electric goosebump feeling when something is too specific to be a coincidence. Because what are the chances? Not just that we both felt it, but that he called me at all, out of the blue, the day after, to mention something so strange, so random, so personal. After that, I told the story a few times to friends and family. People had theories. Most of them said it was our gran, who'd passed away not long before, maybe a couple of months earlier. Like a little check-in. A strange, clumsy way of saying, I'm still here, I'm okay, and you're okay too. And honestly, that's the version that sits best in my chest. I can't prove it. I don't know what it was. But if it was her, it makes it feel less like something creepy and more like something oddly affectionate. Like someone trying to get your attention the only way they can. Still, every time I think about it, I get the chills all over again. So, what do you think? Coincidence? Some weird shared timing thing? Or something else entirely? So, I'm going to keep names and places vague, just because it still feels a little too close to home. A few years ago, I started having this recurring nightmare. It wasn't complicated either. It was always the same image. A dark tower hanging over everything in my life. Not like a normal building, more like a presence. Like it hovered there, and no matter what I did, where I went, what I tried to focus on, I was doing it under that shadow. And the feeling that came with it was wrong, heavy, mean, like the tower was watching. Not long after those dreams started, I finished college, information systems technically, and I started hunting for a job. I lived just outside a town where gambling was legal, close enough that it wasn't weird to drive through it on the way to grab groceries or head home from somewhere. One afternoon, I was driving back and I noticed the first casino on the edge of town had this big banner out front, "Now hiring." It was so close to my apartment that the commute would have been laughable. I checked their site that night, and sure enough, they needed entry-level IT techs. I applied without thinking too hard, and 2 weeks later, I was badge in, radio on my belt, learning where all the network closets were. And here's where it gets unsettling. Almost immediately after I started, the nightmares shifted. They didn't go away, they got specific. I started dreaming about tragedy happening there, like the casino collapsing, or the ground opening up underneath it, like this giant sinkhole swallowing the whole building. I'd wake up with my heart racing, and the images would stick with me even after I'd brushed my teeth and tried to act normal. One day, trying to talk myself down, I asked my manager. His name was Dale, real down to earth, one of those guys who always had a story and always knew where every wire ran, what the land used to be before the casino. I was expecting something simple. Old utility lines, maybe an abandoned foundation, something explainable. He didn't even hesitate. He just kind of nodded toward the hillside outside and said, "Used to be a cemetery." I laughed, like a reflex laugh, because what else do you do? And Dale pointed up the hill again, like he was indicating a landmark, and he goes, "They moved the graves up there when they built all this." The way he said it wasn't spooky or dramatic. It was just a fact. Like he was telling me where the employee parking was. And that almost made it worse. The thing is, I loved the job. I really did. I loved the problem solving. I loved the sense of being part of something big, especially because they were building a new hotel tower attached to the casino, and there was always some new system going in. Access control, cameras, network upgrades, all this infrastructure most people never think about. I didn't touch the slot machines or gaming systems. That was a different department with their own rules and their own locked doors. But I handled all the other IT odds and ends that make a place like that run. But the building itself, it had a vibe. The worst spot was in the basement, at one far corner, like the building's blind spot. I can't explain it any better than this. When I walked down there, sometimes the back of my neck would prickle like I'd stepped into a cold draft, even if the air was still. Nothing ever jumped out at me. Nothing ever physically happened. But it felt like a place you weren't meant to linger. People swapped stories about seeing translucent figures down there, old-time workers, like miners with lamps. I never saw them, but I heard it often enough that it became part of the background noise of the place. There was one evening, late summer, still light out, when my supervisor radioed me to fix a printer in the count room area, where the cashiers and accounting stations were. I headed that way, weaving through the casino floor, and when I got to the entrance, they stopped me because it was slammed busy. So I turned around, walking back past this long line of gamblers waiting for a cashier, and halfway down the line, I felt it. That sharp little sensation like someone is staring into the side of your face. I looked over. There was an older woman, Asian, maybe in her 70s, standing there, not moving, not blinking, just watching me like she'd been waiting for me to turn my head. And what hit me first wasn't her expression. It was her eyes. They were black. Not dark brown, not shadowed. Black, corner to corner, no visible white, no visible iris. Nothing that looked human in the usual way. Like two smooth pools of ink in her face. And the strangest part? Nobody else reacted. People around her were chatting, checking phones, complaining about the wait. It was like I was the only one who could see that something was off. I didn't say anything. I didn't freeze. I just kept walking. Like if I acted normal, it couldn't follow me. Later, when the hotel tower was almost ready to open, one of the valet guys, Rico, caught me near the employee entrance. He was pale, jittery, like he'd been holding something in all day. He told me he'd gone up into the tower when it was supposed to be empty. No crews, no events, no guests. He had a video on his phone. In one of the banquet rooms, there was a chandelier hanging from the ceiling. And in the video, the chandelier was shaking gently, like someone had bumped it. You could hear the beads clicking, that tiny glass-on-glass sound. But nobody was near it. Nobody touched it. No airflow strong enough to do that. Just movement. Then the tower opened. A while after that, my team got told we needed to clear out a storage space in the tower. Old equipment, boxes, random IT leftovers that had been shoved into a room to deal with later. So we loaded up carts and hauled them to the elevator lobby on one of the hotel floors. I ended up standing there alone for a minute with 3 carts piled with gear, waiting for someone to radio back that they'd found us a room. The hallway was quiet in that specific way hotels are quiet, like the building is holding its breath. And then one of the carts, just one, started to roll. Slowly, smoothly, right toward me. I stared at it, and I swear my brain tried to make it normal. Maybe the floor tilted. Maybe my hands hadn't locked the wheels. Maybe... But it kept rolling. So I did the dumbest thing, because sometimes humor is the only shield you have. I half laughed and said, loud and sharp, "Okay, knock it off." And the cart stopped. Not gradually, not like friction took over. It stopped like someone put a hand on it. I quit a couple years later, but not because of any of this. Honestly, it was plain human workplace stuff. Management changes, personalities, the kind of thing that wears you down anywhere. But even after I left, the place didn't really leave me. Because the dreams came back. Not the little stress dreams. The original one. The tower. I dreamed I was standing outside, looking up at this towering hotel, and people were inside screaming and pounding on the windows like something catastrophic was happening, like the building was turning into a trap. And in the dream, I had this horrible, sinking recognition as I looked up and realized, that's it. That's the casino tower. That night, my husband, Evan, jerked awake so suddenly he woke me up, like he'd heard something. He didn't even say anything at first, just sat there, breathing hard. And I was groggy, so I rolled over and went right back to sleep. And I dreamed I heard an agonized scream, far off, carried on the air, from the direction of the casino. It's still standing. I drive past it all the time. Nothing's collapsed. The tower's still there, lit up like it's proud of itself. But I don't know how to explain this without sounding dramatic. Something about it feels wrong. Like it's still watching. Like it always was.